Welcome, dear friends, to a gentle journey through the rich and timeless lore of the Legend of Zelda timeline. This beloved series, which began as a humble adventure about a boy named Link and a princess named Zelda, has blossomed into a universe spanning across generations and worlds, filled with heroes, villains, and legends that echo through time. Tonight, we'll explore the origins of Hyrule, the rise of its champions, the mysterious powers of the Triforce, and the deep rooted struggle between light and shadow. From the earliest battles to the most recent adventures, we will travel through eras long past and worlds yet to be, weaving a tapestry of stories that span centuries. Let the soft winds of the past carry you into a peaceful reflection of one of the most iconic tales ever told. Now take a deep breath, allow your body to settle, and feel the weight of your day drift away. As you listen, let your mind be free to wander through the ancient halls of Hyrule, past enchanted forests, over tranquil rivers, and beneath starry skies. And if you find comfort in drifting through stories like these, you're welcome to subscribe and softly tell me where you're listening from tonight. Now, let us begin our journey together through the first whispers of time, where the world itself was shaped by the hands of gods and the hearts of heroes. Long before the land of Hyrule ever came to be, there was only darkness, a vast, endless void. It was in this darkness that the three goddesses descended, their presence shaping the very fabric of the world. They were the creators, the architects of the universe, and each held dominion over an element essential to the balance of all things. Far above the chaos, the goddess Din, with her fiery red hair and powerful presence, summoned the earth beneath her. She created the mountains, the valleys, and the rivers, shaping the land with her mighty hands. Her gift was the earth itself, a place for life to grow and flourish, a foundation upon which Hyrule would stand. Beside her was the goddess Nairu, the embodiment of wisdom. With her deep blue aura, she weaved the laws of the universe. She carved the stars into the sky and the flow of time into the fabric of existence. Through her, knowledge was born, and the very essence of Hyrule's future was shaped. It was her teachings that would guide the heroes, the kings, and the people who would one day dwell in this land. Lastly, there was Farore, the green goddess who embodied courage. With her gentle hands, she brought life to the world. She sowed the seeds of all living creatures, from the smallest insect to the grandest beasts. It was Farore who breathed life into the forests and the oceans, the animals and the plants, ensuring that the world would teem with the spirit of adventure, of discovery, and of growth. And so, from the darkness, the three goddesses gave birth to the land. Together, they left behind the sacred Triforce, a symbol of their unity, containing the essence of their power. The Triforce was a treasure that would pass through time, shaping the future of Hyrule in ways both known and unknown. But the goddesses, having completed their work, withdrew to the heavens, leaving Hyrule to its fate. Yet in the shadows, a force stirred. A being of great evil, born from the very fabric of the darkness, rose up. This was Demise, the ancient incarnation of hatred itself. His only desire was to claim the Triforce and control the world that the goddesses had created. With the power of the Triforce in his grasp, he could bring about an age of eternal darkness. Demise's forces ravaged the land, his armies threatening the very existence of Hyrule. But the goddesses, knowing the danger, summoned a hero, one who would carry the courage of Farore, the wisdom of Nairu, and the strength of Din. This hero was chosen by the gods themselves, destined to wield the power of the Master Sword and defeat the encroaching darkness. The hero was but a boy, yet his heart carried the weight of the world. The Master Sword, crafted in the fires of the goddesses, would be his instrument of justice, his shield against the forces of evil. But first, he would need to undergo trials, tests of courage, wisdom, and strength that would prove his worthiness to stand against demise. As the hero grew, so did the legend of Hyrule. His journey began in the small, peaceful village of Orden, nestled beneath the shadow of the grand Hyrule castle. From here, his story would unfold, drawing him into a battle for the very soul of the land. Along the way, he would encounter powerful allies, including Princess Zelda, the incarnation of the goddess Hylia, who would aid him in his mission. Together, they would face the forces of darkness and fight to protect the future of Hyrule. In the midst of these trials, the hero would discover his own connection to the gods. He would uncover the ancient secrets of the Master Sword and learn that he was not just a boy of Orden, but a chosen champion bound by fate to restore balance to the land. The journey would take him across vast fields, through dense forests, and into the depths of dungeons, where he would face monsters and obstacles that challenged both his physical strength and his heart. As he ventured deeper into Hyrule's heart, the hero would come to understand the true meaning of courage. It was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face the unknown, to walk into darkness with the light of hope shining within. And through this understanding, he would find the strength to confront demise, to defeat the ancient evil, and to protect the Triforce that the goddesses had entrusted to him. But the darkness did not disappear with Demise's defeat. The world would continue to face trials as new heroes rose to defend it, each one carrying a piece of the Triforce, each one guided by the wisdom of the past. The tale of Hyrule would continue, stretching out across the ages, with the echoes of this hero's journey lingering in the hearts of all who would come after. And so, dear friend, as you drift deeper into sleep, let the legend of Hyrule lull you into a peaceful rest. Know that the world, though it may be filled with shadows, is always brightened by the light of courage, wisdom, and strength. The hero's journey is never truly over. It lives on in the stories, in the hearts of those who remember, and in the timeless cycles of the land. In the beginning, the goddess Hylia stood as the protector of all that was good and pure in the world. Though she was a powerful force, she was not without compassion, for her heart was tied to the well-being of the land she helped create. Under her care, Hyrule flourished, the first cities rising from the fertile soil, where people lived in harmony with the land and the divine forces that governed it. But as peace settled across the land, the darkness that threatened Hyrule was not yet vanquished. Beneath the surface of the world, a shadow lingered, an ancient malevolent presence that would not be so easily forgotten. It was this presence, born from the very chaos that preceded creation, that would one day rise again to challenge the goddess and the land she so lovingly nurtured. It was in this age of peace that the hero's predecessors came to be. The first great heroes were not born of prophecy, but were chosen by their courage, their hearts full of love for the land they called home. These brave souls stood alongside Hylia, battling against the encroaching darkness and ensuring that Hyrule remained safe. The goddess Hylia, understanding the fragile nature of peace, imbued her greatest champion with an incredible power, the Triforce of Courage. With this gift, the hero was bound to her will, a mortal vessel of divine strength. This hero would face unimaginable challenges, traveling across the vast expanse of Hyrule and even venturing into the realms beyond. Through the ages, the legend of the hero and his connection to Helia became one of the most cherished stories. As time passed, the world changed, but the lessons of the goddess remained. Love, strength, courage, and wisdom would guide the people of Hyrule, no matter the darkness that sought to invade. However, Hylia knew that true peace could never be achieved without balance. For every light, there must be darkness. For every hero, there must be a villain. As much as the goddess sought to protect Hyrule, she understood that the world would never be free of the shadows that crept along its borders. Thus, she made a difficult decision. She would not only guide the hero, but also offer him a legacy, one that would transcend time itself. Kalia knew that the evil that lurked in the hearts of men and in the very depths of the earth would never disappear entirely. In order to ensure the continued balance of the world, she created the Master Sword, a blade imbued with the very essence of the goddess's own power. This sword would become the hero's greatest weapon, passed down through the ages, awaiting the hand of the next chosen one. The Master Sword would always be there, a symbol of hope, a shining light against the encroaching darkness. But the sword alone was not enough. Hylia's power would need to be sealed, hidden away for safekeeping, for even she could not remain in the world forever. The goddess entrusted her power to the people of Hyrule, to be protected and passed on through the generations. Those who would rise as champions of the land would always bear the weight of her divine influence, but they would also carry with them the courage to stand against the forces of evil. For eons, Hyrule stood as a beacon of light in a world filled with peril. Its people, guided by the wisdom of the goddess and the heroes who rose to protect it, lived in harmony, knowing that the light of hope would always shine through the darkest of nights. However, the shadows that lurked in the corners of Hyrule would never cease to grow. As long as the Triforce remained, as long as the land was touched by the divine, there would always be those who sought to claim its power for themselves. The Triforce, a relic of immeasurable strength, would never truly be at peace, for it was a magnet for those who desired control over all things. As the years stretched on, Hyrule's cycle of light and shadow continued. Every hero born was bound to the land's fate, their destinies written in the stars long before they took their first breath. And yet, no matter how many times the darkness was defeated, it would always find a way to return. With each new hero came new trials, new challenges, and a deeper understanding of the balance that governed all things. Through it all, Zelda, the Princess of Hyrule, remained the eternal symbol of hope. She was more than just the ruler of the land. She was the divine bridge between the people of Hyrule and the goddesses themselves. She was the one who would call upon the power of the goddesses when the land was in peril, the one who would guide the hero through the trials that awaited him. Zelda's role was sacred, a constant in the ever-changing world, for she was the one who kept the flame of Helia alive. As the tale of Hyrule continued to unfold, so did the story of Zelda and the heroes who would come to her aid. Each hero, chosen by fate, would carry the legacy of Hylia with them, their journeys written into the very fabric of the land. The Master Sword would pass from hand to hand, its power enduring through the ages. And though the darkness would always return, so too would the light, for as long as there were heroes to rise against the encroaching shadow. And so, dear listener, as you slip further into your dreams, remember that the world of Hyrule, though it may seem distant, lives within us all. Its legends of courage, wisdom, and strength are as timeless as the stars above, waiting to be told again and again. The balance between light and dark is eternal, and with each new hero that emerges, the light shines just a little brighter. As the age of the goddess Hylia slowly faded into myth, the land of Hyrule grew ever more vulnerable. The peaceful age granted by the divine was but a fleeting moment in the grand cycle of time, and with peace came the quiet stirrings of something darker, something ancient, born from the very essence of chaos itself. Demise, a being forged from the eternal darkness that lay beneath the earth, rose again to claim Hyrule as his own. His very presence caused the land to tremble, a reminder that the balance between light and shadow was always delicate. From the depths of the earth, he emerged as a force of destruction, an entity consumed by hatred and a thirst for power. His heart, filled with malice, sought the Triforce, believing that with its power, he could reshape the world in his twisted image. His power was not just physical, but psychological. Demise was not only a being of force and might, but also of manipulation, for his hatred twisted the minds of men and beasts alike, turning them into monstrous creations. His army swelled with darkness, his shadow touching the hearts of all who would listen to his promises. Under Demise's influence, creatures of the night, beasts, monsters, and spirits rose from the shadows, ready to destroy everything that stood in the way of his dominion. At the heart of this darkness lay the Triforce. Demise sought it above all else, believing that its power would grant him ultimate control over life and death itself. The sacred relic had been guarded by the descendants of the goddess Hylia for centuries, but now Demise's influence had grown too strong. The time had come for Hyrule to face its greatest challenge yet, a challenge that would require the rise of a hero greater than any before. The gods knew that the time for a new hero had come. As Demise's shadow spread across the land, the goddess Hylia called upon the courage of a new chosen one. This hero, destined to battle the forces of darkness, would be unlike any who had come before. Born not from the earth, but from the very skies, this hero would come from a distant land, far above the clouds, where the winds whispered the songs of ancient heroes. In a quiet village, beneath the floating sky islands of the ancient kingdom, a young boy would take his first steps toward destiny. His name was Link, a boy of humble origin, but with the courage and heart of a true hero. He was born not into royalty, but into a life of simplicity. Yet the goddess Hylia knew that this was the hero she had chosen. He would rise from obscurity to stand as the guardian of Hyrule, the one who would face demise and restore balance to the land. Link's journey began in the quiet comfort of his home, nestled in the heart of a peaceful forest. But the call to adventure was inevitable. Soon, the peace of his home was shattered by the shadow of demise, as the darkness began to encroach upon the world. Link's life would never be the same, for the winds of fate had chosen him to be the one to confront this ancient evil. His path was not one he chose freely, for destiny had already written his story. Guided by the goddess Helia's divine will, Link was given the Master Sword, the legendary blade that would serve as his shield against the darkness. But the journey to wield it would not be easy. The sword was more than just a weapon. It was a key to understanding the land's history, its struggles, and its triumphs. Link's journey would take him through dungeons filled with deadly foes, ancient ruins filled with riddles, and lands shrouded in mystery. As Link traveled across Hyrule, he met others who would help him on his quest. Princess Zelda, the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, stood by his side, her wisdom and strength guiding him through the trials he faced. Together, they would unlock the secrets of Hyrule's past and discover the true nature of Demise's power. The hero's journey was not one of physical strength alone. It was a journey of the heart, of courage, wisdom, and love. Link would come to learn that the true power of the Master Sword was not simply in its sharp blade, but in the unwavering determination to protect those who could not protect themselves. The sword was a symbol of hope, not just for Link, but for all of Hyrule, and it was through his selfless acts that the light of Hylia would shine once more. Along the way, Link was tested in ways he could never have imagined. He faced trials of strength, courage, and intellect, but he also confronted his own fears and doubts. The journey was as much an internal one as it was an external one, for Link had to learn what it meant to be a true hero. He had to understand that the greatest strength came not from the weapon he wielded, but from the heart that guided him. With each step, Link grew stronger, and with each victory, he drew closer to confronting Demise. The final battle between light and shadow would be inevitable, and it would take all of Link's strength, wisdom, and courage to overcome the darkness. But even as he neared his goal, the shadow of Demise loomed ever closer, threatening to engulf everything Link had fought to protect. And so, dear listener, as you drift further into the peaceful embrace of sleep, remember that the battle between light and dark is never truly over. It is a cycle that repeats through time, but with each hero that rises, the light shines just a little brighter. In the end, it is not the hero's strength that determines the outcome, but the strength of their heart. Let the story of Link and his journey to defeat Demise linger in your thoughts as you slip deeper into your dreams, knowing that the eternal fight for Hyrule's soul continues, forever preserved in the hearts of those who remember its legend. As the ancient forces of evil gathered, threatening to plunge the land into darkness, a lone hero stood at the threshold of fate. Link, the chosen one, was not yet the legend that would be passed down through the ages. He was a young boy, humble and unaware of the great destiny that awaited him. But destiny is a force that does not care for age or station. It calls upon those with the courage to heed its summons. The land of Hyrule had grown accustomed to peace, but peace is a fragile thing. Beneath the surface, the forces of darkness whispered and moved, gathering their strength in the shadows. Demise, the ancient being born of chaos, had risen again, his hatred echoing across the land. His desire for the Triforce was unstoppable, and with it, he sought to bring Hyrule under his control. It was in these dark times that the first true test of Link's courage would unfold. Link's journey began with a call to arms, a summons that would take him far from the comfort of his home and into the heart of Hyrule's greatest battle. As he ventured forth, the world around him seemed to shift, the very air growing heavy with the weight of his purpose. The path before him was long, fraught with dangers, but his heart remained steadfast, for he knew that he was not walking this path alone. The light of the goddesses and the guidance of Princess Zelda would be with him every step of the way. The first battle that awaited Link was not one fought with the sword alone. It was a battle of the heart, for the hero had to first conquer his own fears. In the distant reaches of the land, in the shadow of the ominous Death Mountain, Link encountered his first true adversary, a creature born of shadow, a manifestation of Demise's dark power. This beast, a fierce and terrible enemy, was unlike any that Link had faced before. It towered over him, its eyes glowing with malice, its very presence an embodiment of the evil that sought to consume Hyrule. But the hero was not afraid. He had already begun to understand that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to stand against it. Link raised his sword, the Master Sword, and charged forward, determined to protect the land he loved. The battle was fierce, with the very earth beneath their feet shaking as the two forces clashed. Link's strength was tested, but his resolve was stronger still. The monster, though formidable, was no match for the hero's courage and the divine power of the Master Sword. As the creature fell, defeated, the land seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The hero had passed his first trial, but the journey was far from over. The darkness still loomed, and the forces of evil would not rest until Hyrule had been consumed. But this victory, though small in the grand scheme of things, marked the beginning of Link's true awakening. He was no longer just a boy. He was a hero, chosen by fate to face the ancient darkness that threatened to destroy all that was good. With each step, the weight of the hero's journey grew heavier, but Link carried it with grace, for he knew that he was not just fighting for himself, but for all of Hyrule. Along the way, he encountered allies who would help him on his quest. The wise and powerful Princess Zelda, who carried the wisdom of the goddess Hylia within her. The loyal and brave warriors who fought by his side, and the mystical beings who held the secrets to the Triforce. Together, they would face the challenges that lay ahead, their hearts united in the fight against the darkness. As Link journeyed deeper into the heart of Hyrule, he encountered more enemies, beasts, monsters, and dark sorcerers who were all under Demise's sway. But with each battle, he grew stronger, learning to wield the power of the Master Sword with greater precision and skill. His connection to the sword deepened, as if it was not just a weapon, but an extension of his very soul. With every swing of the blade, he could feel the strength of the goddess Hylia flowing through him, filling him with a sense of purpose that transcended the mortal world. And yet, for all his victories, Link knew that the true battle was still to come. The final confrontation with Demise would be the ultimate test of his courage, his wisdom, and his strength. The darkness would not be defeated by the sword alone. It would take everything Link had to offer, every ounce of his being, to stand against the overwhelming evil that threatened to engulf the world. The battle would take place in the very heart of Hyrule, in a place where the forces of light and dark had clashed for centuries. It was here that Link would confront Demise, the source of all the chaos that had plagued the land. The hero's journey had brought him to this moment, and though the darkness loomed ever closer, he was ready. He had faced his fears, he had battled the monsters of the night, and now he would face the ultimate evil. The Master Sword was in his hand, and the light of the goddesses was in his heart. And so, as you drift further into your dreams, remember that the hero's journey is never an easy one. It is filled with trials, tests of strength, and moments of doubt. But through it all, it is the courage in one's heart that leads the way. Just as Link faced the darkness with unwavering resolve, so too can we face the challenges of our own lives with strength and determination. Let the courage of the hero fill your dreams, and may you find peace in the knowledge that even in the darkest of times, the light of hope will always shine. The winds of fate are fickle, and even the mightiest of heroes must one day leave behind the land they fought to protect. After the trials, the battles, and the sacrifices, the hero stands at the precipice of destiny, ready to depart on a journey that will transcend both time and space. In the grand scheme of Hyrule's long and storied history, the hero's departure is not an end, but a new beginning, one that will echo through the ages. Link's journey to the skies began under the most extraordinary circumstances, for the land of Hyrule was not the only realm to exist in the vastness of the universe. Above the clouds, in a place untouched by time, a kingdom floated, hidden from the eyes of mortals. This kingdom, known as the Skyloft, was the last bastion of peace and safety in an otherwise chaotic world. It was here that Link's true legacy began to take shape, far above the earth and into the heavens themselves. The skies were a realm of beauty and serenity, a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged below. And it was within this peaceful sanctuary that the hero's journey took a different turn. For it was here that Link would first uncover the hidden truths of his existence, as well as the ancient secrets of the land he had sworn to protect. The goddess Hylia, long believed to have vanished from the world, revealed herself to be more than just a distant legend. She had watched over Link from the heavens, guiding him in ways he had yet to understand. But it was not enough for the goddess to remain a passive protector. The time had come for her to play a more active role in the hero's journey. With the help of her divine power, Link would ascend into the skies on a journey that would take him to the farthest reaches of the land. His mission was to defeat the dark forces that had once again risen, and to uncover the true origins of the evil that sought to destroy the world. And so, Link took flight on a magnificent creature known as a loftwing, a bird of pure grace and strength. With the wind at his back and the sky stretching out before him, Link soared above the clouds, leaving behind the familiar world he had known for something far more vast and mysterious. It was in this new world, this kingdom of the skies, that Link would confront a challenge unlike any he had faced before. The sky, though peaceful, held its own set of dangers. Creatures that had been hidden for centuries, their wings strong enough to carve through the air, awaited the hero. These creatures, some of which were born of the very chaos that had once plagued the land, were powerful and swift, determined to keep Link from reaching his destination. Yet Link was undeterred. With every battle, he honed his skills, mastering the art of flight and swordplay. As Link ventured deeper into the mysteries of the sky, he uncovered more than just enemies. He uncovered the lost history of the gods themselves. The ancient temples, hidden from mortal eyes, held secrets that only the chosen could uncover. Within these hallowed halls, Link found relics of the past, each one telling a story of a time long forgotten. He discovered the truth behind the Triforce, the sacred relic that had been passed down through the ages. He learned of its power, its history, and its influence on the very fabric of Hyrule's existence. But it was not only the history of the Triforce that Link uncovered, it was the history of the very hero he had become. For in the sky, Link discovered his connection to the goddesses themselves. He learned that his fate was intertwined with the divine, that his actions in this life were part of a much larger story that stretched across time. His legacy was not just as a hero of Hyrule, but as a champion of the gods, destined to protect the land from the shadows that would forever seek to consume it. But even in the sky, the shadows loomed. The dark force known as Demise had risen once again, this time taking on a more tangible form. It was not enough to simply battle the monsters and creatures that had been summoned by the dark god's power. Link had to confront Demise directly. The battle that awaited him would be unlike any he had faced before. It was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of the world. The confrontation with Demise was a trial of both strength and will. The darkness that the hero faced was overwhelming, its power unlike anything he had ever encountered. But Link was no ordinary boy. He was the chosen hero, the one destined to wield the Master Sword and stand against the forces of darkness. With every strike of his sword, he chipped away at the shadows, his courage and determination fueling his every move. The battle was fierce, but in the end, the hero emerged victorious. Demise was vanquished, and Hyrule was saved once more. But the victory was bittersweet. The goddess Hylia, knowing that her time on the mortal plane was drawing to a close, made one final sacrifice. She chose to seal herself away, to protect the Triforce and ensure that its power would never fall into the wrong hands again. As Link gazed upon the sky, he understood that the world would never be the same again. The hero's journey had come full circle, but it was a journey that would never truly end. And so, Link's flight into the heavens marked the beginning of a new era for Hyrule. The legacy of the sky, of the Loftwings, and the ancient gods would live on in the hearts of those who remembered. The hero's journey was far from over, for the land of Hyrule would always need its champions, its heroes, its guardians. As you slip deeper into sleep, dear listener, remember that the story of Link, the hero chosen by the gods, is one that lives in the hearts of all who dare to dream. It is a story of courage, of sacrifice, and of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. And though the hero may one day depart from the land, his legacy will live on, carried forward by those who continue to fight for the peace and prosperity of Hyrule. As the sun rose over the peaceful land of Hyrule, a new chapter began in the tale of the goddess Hylia and her enduring legacy. Though she had sealed herself away, her presence continued to guide the world, lingering in the hearts of the heroes who rose to protect the land. Hyrule was once again at peace, but that peace, like all things in the world, was fragile. The events of the past had left their mark on the land, and though the darkness had been defeated, it was never fully gone. The shadows still lingered, hiding in the corners of the world, waiting for their chance to return. But the goddess Hylia's protection, woven into the very fabric of Hyrule, ensured that the light would never fade completely. It was in this time of relative peace that the people of Hyrule began to rebuild. The great cities, the tranquil villages, and the lush fields flourished once more under the watchful eyes of the descendants of those who had fought to protect the land. The Master Sword, now a sacred relic, was kept in the heart of Hyrule, its blade glowing softly, a reminder of the victory over demise and the eternal watchfulness of the goddess. Yet, as with all legends, time passed, and with it, the stories of the gods and the heroes faded into myth. The people of Hyrule began to forget the ancient teachings, the ways of the goddess, and the struggles that had once shaped the world. They turned their focus inward, building a society that was free from the constant threat of evil. But in doing so, they grew complacent, forgetting that the darkness, though dormant, was always waiting to return. It was in this time of forgetting that the land of Hyrule once again began to stir. The seeds of darkness were sown, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The evil that had once been defeated did not die. It merely slept, biding its time. And in the silence of the land, a new hero was needed. Far from the bustling cities and peaceful villages, in the quiet forests and deep caves, whispers of the goddess's protection remained. The ancient symbols, carved into the stone and hidden within the sacred temples, still held the power to awaken the next great hero. And so, when the time came, a new champion would rise. The hero was no longer just a boy from a humble village. This time, the hero would be different. He would be forged by the land itself, born from the very earth and sky that had once been shaped by the goddess's hand. His journey would take him through the forgotten corners of Hyrule, where the lost relics of the past still held the key to understanding the true nature of the world. But the hero would not face this journey alone. The people of Hyrule, though they had forgotten the old ways, still carried within them the seeds of the goddess's protection. In every heart there was a spark of the divine waiting to be ignited. And as the hero ventured forth, the people would begin to remember, to awaken from their slumber, and to join in the fight to protect the land once more. This hero, like the ones who came before him, would face trials that tested not only his strength, but his heart. He would journey through ancient temples, where the forgotten gods whispered their secrets to those who were willing to listen. He would battle monsters that had long lain dormant, their eyes glowing with the same malice that had once threatened to consume the world. But through it all, the hero would carry the legacy of the goddess Helia with him, would learn that his strength was not just in his sword or his ability to fight, but in his connection to the land, to the people, and to the gods who had shaped the world. As he ventured deeper into the heart of Hyrule, he would discover that the true power of the goddess lay not in her divine magic, but in the love and courage that resided within the hearts of those she protected. In the depths of the sacred temples, the hero would uncover the lost history of Hyrule. He would learn of the ancient battles fought by the first heroes, the gods who had shaped the world, and the Triforce that had bound the land together. He would come to understand that his role was not just to defeat evil, but to restore the balance between light and dark, to protect the land from the forces that sought to tear it apart. And as he journeyed, the goddess's protection would guide him. The land, once again at peace, would grow stronger as the hero's heart grew bolder. The goddess Hylia's influence would spread through the world once more, her light shining in the hearts of all who chose to fight for the future of Hyrule. But as the hero faced the trials of his journey, he would also face the darkness that still clung to the land. The shadows, though weakened, had not disappeared. They had merely changed form, taken on new faces and new forms. And so, the hero would battle not only the physical monsters that sought to destroy him, but also the darkness within his own heart. For only by confronting the shadows within himself could he hope to defeat the shadows that threatened Hyrule. In the final confrontation, the hero would come face to face with the darkness itself. The evil that had once been sealed away would rise again, and the hero would be forced to make the ultimate sacrifice. But even in the face of death, the goddess's protection would remain. The light would never fade, for as long as there was courage in the hearts of Hyrule's people, the darkness would never fully triumph. And so, dear listener, as you slip deeper into your dreams, remember that the story of Hyrule is not just a tale of heroes and battles. It is a story of light and darkness, of love and courage, of the eternal struggle between the forces that shape the world. Just as the goddess Hylia watched over her land, so too can we find strength in the light that resides within ourselves. In the vast expanse of Hyrule's history, there are moments of great change, times when the very fabric of the world seems to shift, and new eras are born. The Age of Twilight was one such time, a period where the balance between light and dark became more pronounced, and the boundaries between worlds began to blur. It was an age of uncertainty, but also one of transformation, where the shadow of darkness crept into the hearts of the land, and where the hero would emerge once more to restore balance. It began with a mysterious event, one that seemed to have no immediate explanation. The land of Hyrule, once radiant and full of life, was suddenly plunged into an eerie twilight. The sun, which had once bathed the world in its warm light, seemed to hang low in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched across the land. The people of Hyrule were left in confusion and fear, unsure of the cause of this unnatural change. But within this darkness, the land's greatest protector would rise again. Link, the hero of time, had already faced many trials, but this new challenge would test him in ways he could never have imagined. The land of Hyrule was no longer the simple kingdom it had once been. Something had entered the world, an evil that could not be seen by the naked eye, but one that could twist the hearts of men and beasts alike. It was the Twilight Realm, a parallel dimension that existed alongside Hyrule, where light and dark coexisted in a delicate balance. This realm, though hidden from most, had always been a part of Hyrule's story. The creatures from the Twilight Realm were unlike anything the people of Hyrule had ever seen. They were ethereal, elusive, and full of strange power. But their arrival in Hyrule was no accident. The dark forces that had once been sealed away were attempting to breach the boundaries between the two worlds, seeking to claim Hyrule for their own. The first sign of this intrusion came when the land itself began to change. The once vibrant forests turned to desolate, shadowy landscapes. The sky, once blue and clear, was now a murky gray. The very nature of Hyrule was being swallowed by the encroaching darkness, and the people were powerless to stop it. It was as though a shadow had fallen over everything, suffocating the land's light. In this moment of despair, the goddess Hylia's protection seemed to fade. But even in the darkest hours, the hero would rise. Link, guided by the ancient power of the Master Sword, ventured once again into the world to confront the growing threat. But this time, his journey was different. The twilight had altered the very landscape of Hyrule, and the borders between the world of light and the Twilight Realm were no longer as clear as they once had been. Link's path took him into the heart of this new world, into the Twilight Realm itself. It was a world of strange, ethereal beauty, where the air was thick with a feeling of melancholy and loss. The creatures that roamed this land were not the beasts of Hyrule, but strange, shadowy figures with glowing eyes. They moved with an eerie grace, as if they were more than just animals. They were something more, something ancient. The deeper Link ventured into the Twilight Realm, the more he came to understand the nature of the threat that faced him. It was not just a battle against physical enemies, but a fight for the soul of Hyrule itself. The twilight was not merely a shadow, it was a reflection of the darkness that lay within the hearts of men, a manifestation of their fear, their hatred, and their greed. It sought to corrupt all that was pure and good in the world. But even in this world of shadow, Link found allies. The people of Hyrule, though oppressed by the twilight, were not entirely helpless. Among them was a tribe of creatures known as the Twily, beings who had once been part of the Twilight Realm but had been cast out long ago. These creatures, though born of darkness, had a deep connection to the light, and they offered Link their wisdom and aid. The most important of these allies was Midna, the princess of the Twily. Midna, though initially enigmatic and distant, became one of Link's most important companions. She was a being of great power, but also of great sorrow. She had been exiled from the Twilight Realm and was seeking to restore her kingdom and her people. With Link by her side, Midna set out to reclaim her rightful place as the ruler of the Twily and to protect the balance between the realms. Together, Link and Midna journeyed through the twilight, battling the creatures that had been corrupted by the darkness and searching for the source of the evil that threatened Hyrule. Along the way, Link discovered that the true enemy was not just the dark creatures of the Twilight Realm, but the evil king who ruled over it. Zant, the usurper who had seized control of the realm and sought to plunge Hyrule into eternal twilight. Zant, though a mere pawn in the grand scheme of things, was a powerful and manipulative force. He had turned the Twilight Realm into a kingdom of shadows, and his influence had spread into the hearts of Hyrule, turning the people against each other. His ultimate goal was to overthrow the balance of the world and to merge the two realms into one, creating a world where darkness ruled and the light could never again shine. But Link, guided by the strength of his heart and the power of the Master Sword, would not allow this to happen. He fought his way through the Twilight Realm, confronting Zant and the dark forces that sought to destroy Hyrule. The battle was long and fierce, but in the end, Link's courage and determination prevailed. Zant was defeated, and the Twilight Realm was restored to its rightful place. With the darkness lifted, Link returned to Hyrule, where the light once again bathed the land. The people, who had once been shrouded in fear and despair, were now free. The twilight had come to an end, and Hyrule had been saved. But the hero's journey was not yet over. For though the land was at peace once more, the cycle of light and dark would continue, and new heroes would rise to protect it. As you slip further into sleep, dear listener, let the hero's journey through the twilight realm remind you that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. The battle between light and dark may never truly end, but with courage in our hearts, we can face whatever comes our way. In the land of Hyrule, there are stories that stretch across centuries, their details fading with time, but their essence remaining forever intact. One of the most poignant tales to emerge from this period was the story of a lost hero, a hero who had once stood tall against the encroaching darkness of the Twilight Realm, but was now forgotten by the very people he had sought to protect. This hero, unlike those who would later take up the mantle of the legendary champion, was not of Hyrule's royal bloodline, nor did he bear the markings of divine power. He was an ordinary soul, drawn into the struggle between light and dark by fate itself. His name was lost to history, but his deeds, though largely obscured by time, would become the foundation upon which the greatest legends of Hyrule were built. The hero's journey began long before the arrival of Link, the great champion of time. In the days before the Age of Twilight, Hyrule was a kingdom of prosperity and peace, its people blissfully unaware of the coming darkness. But shadows, like whispered secrets, had begun to creep across the land, and in the quiet corners of the kingdom, dark forces were gathering strength. At the heart of the darkness was the Twilight Realm, a world of ethereal beauty and haunting mystery. Its inhabitants, the Twili, were creatures of shadow, once part of Hyrule, but now banished to their own realm, separated from the light of the world they had once known. For centuries, they had been content in their isolation, neither friend nor foe to the people of Hyrule. But when Zant, a usurper king of the Twili, sought to break the boundaries between worlds and cast the world of light into perpetual darkness, everything changed. The first signs of the Twili king's plans began to surface, and a young hero who lived in a distant corner of Hyrule was unknowingly drawn into this web of fate. This hero, humble and brave, was not unlike the future champions that would follow in his footsteps. He lived quietly in a small village, nestled beneath the shadow of the Great Death Mountain. His life, though simple, was full of love and care for the land, and he was respected by his people for his wisdom and courage. It was in the quiet forests near his home that the hero's story truly began. As the shadows of the Twilight Realm spread, a terrible curse befell the hero. He was transformed, much like those who would later fall under the influence of the Twilight Realm's magic, into a shadowy form. His once bright spirit was now bound to the darkness, his body cast in shadow, and his connection to the light severed. For the first time, the hero felt the true weight of the darkness that had been creeping through the land. But even as his form was changed, his heart remained untouched. Though the curse of the Twilight Realm had altered his body, it could not alter his will. The hero's love for Hyrule and its people burned within him like a bright flame, refusing to be extinguished by the dark magic that sought to consume him. His transformation into a creature of shadow was not a mark of defeat, but of resilience. He would fight against the darkness that had claimed him, just as he had fought for the light that Hyrule so desperately needed. And so, the lost hero began his journey into the heart of the Twilight Realm. Though he could not return to the land of light in his cursed form, he could still seek out the source of the evil that had claimed him. His path would be one of solitude, for the people of Hyrule could not see past the darkness that had enveloped him. But in the depths of the Twilight Realm, he would find his answers. The hero's journey was not without its struggles. In the Twilight Realm, the boundaries between worlds were blurred, and the very nature of the land seemed to shift with every step he took. The creatures that roam the twilight were twisted versions of the creatures that had once lived in the light. They were fierce, terrifying, and merciless, but they were also full of sorrow, for they too were trapped in a world that did not belong to them. As the hero ventured deeper into the Twilight Realm, he encountered those who had once been like him, mortals who had been twisted into shadowy forms by the curse. Some of them had lost their way entirely, consumed by the darkness that had overtaken them. Others, like the hero himself, fought to hold on to the remnants of their former selves, their hearts still guided by the light. The lost hero's journey was not one of physical battles alone. It was a journey of the soul, a struggle against the darkness that threatened to consume everything he held dear. His courage, as though tested by the shadow, never wavered. He sought out the ancient artifacts that had once been used to seal the Twilight Realm away from the world of light. He uncovered forgotten temples and sacred places, each one revealing another piece of the mystery that lay at the heart of the Twilight Curse. And it was here, in the deepest recesses of the Twilight Realm, that the hero faced his greatest challenge. For it was not just the monsters or the forces of darkness that he had to overcome, it was the darkness within himself. He had been transformed by the curse, and it was only through confronting the shadows within his own heart that he could hope to break free from the curse and restore the balance between light and dark. But even as he faced the darkness within, the hero discovered something more profound. He found that the true strength of the light was not in the power of the gods, but in the hearts of those who chose to stand against the darkness. The light of Hyrule did not come from the sun or the moon, but from the love, courage, and hope that lived within the souls of the people. It was this light, this eternal flame, that the hero carried with him as he made his way back to the world of light. Though he would never be remembered as the hero of legend, his actions laid the foundation for the heroes who would come after him. His story, though forgotten by the people of Hyrule, became a beacon for those who would rise to fight the darkness once more, and in the end, the lost hero's legacy lived on in the hearts of all who fought to protect Hyrule, as the eternal battle between light and dark continued to shape the world. In the deep and quiet corners of Hyrule, there lies a place untouched by time, a place where the very nature of the world shifts into something more mystical, a world of both beauty and profound mystery. The Silent Realm was a realm unlike any other. It was not a place bound by the rules of light or dark, but one that existed in the space between. It was here, in this sacred land, that Link was called to prove his courage in a way unlike any before. The Silent Realm was a trial for the soul, an encounter with one's deepest fears and desires, where silence became both the test and the solace. As Link embarked on his journey to face the shadows that threatened Hyrule, he found himself guided by the voice of a deity. The voice, quiet but strong, echoed through his heart, leading him to the sacred temple where the entrance to the Silent Realm lay. This realm was one of tests, not of strength or skill, but of inner resolve. Here, Link would face the quietest and most profound battle he would ever encounter, not against monsters or darkness, but against his own fear. The Silent Realm was a place of serene beauty, yet the very stillness of the land held a deep, almost unnerving weight. The trees were draped in a pale, ethereal glow, casting long shadows upon the ground. The soft winds whispered through the leaves, but no birds sang, no creatures stirred. The air itself seemed to carry a deep, heavy silence, a silence that bore the weight of forgotten memories and unresolved emotions. It was a world where time felt suspended, where every movement echoed with the gravity of what was to come. Link, stepping into the silent realm, felt the immediate change within him. The familiar world of Hyrule, with its sunlight and its voices, felt distant now. He was no longer just the hero of Hyrule, the boy who wielded the Master Sword. In this realm, he was a soul on trial, a young man walking through a world of shadows within his own heart. The stillness of the land seemed to reach into him, questioning not his bravery, but his very essence. As Link ventured deeper into the silent realm, the trials that awaited him grew more challenging. His courage was tested not by brute force, but by the very essence of his being. The trials of the silent realm were built to challenge Link's deepest fears, to make him face the aspects of himself he often ignored or avoided. And yet, it was only through confronting these fears that Link could move forward. The land itself seemed to whisper to him, urging him to acknowledge the parts of his soul that he had never truly confronted. The first trial came as a vision, an image from his past, one he had long since buried. It was a memory of his family, his home, the life he once led before becoming the hero of Hyrule. In the vision, Link saw himself as a child, full of innocence and joy. But as the memory unfolded, it grew darker. The world he had known was no longer the same. The people he had loved were now distant figures, figures whose faces he could no longer clearly recall. The deep connection he once had to his home seemed to vanish, replaced by an unsettling sense of loneliness and isolation. It was a test of attachment. How much of his past, his origins, would he cling to? The hero had already walked away from his childhood, but the silent realm forced him to confront what he had lost in his journey. The vision was painful, but Link understood. It was not that he was meant to forget his past, but rather to carry it with him as he moved forward. He could not remain tethered to the past if he were to face the future. The hero must accept that he had outgrown certain things, even those that once defined him. As Link moved on, he came upon the second trial. This time the challenge was internal, a struggle against doubt. The air grew thick, and a storm rolled in across the sky, dark clouds swirling ominously overhead. Within the storm, Link heard whispers of uncertainty, voices calling out to him, questioning his worth. "Are you truly the hero you were meant to be?" the voices asked. "Will you falter as you did before? Do you have the strength to defeat the shadows that are coming?" The storm grew louder, its winds howling like a torrent of emotions Link had long suppressed. The whispers pressed against his mind, doubts gnawing at him like gnashing teeth. His journey had been long, filled with victories, but also great losses. Had he failed in his duties? Could he really defeat the encroaching darkness, or was he simply destined to be a pawn in the endless cycles of light and dark? This trial was about belief, about finding the strength to trust in oneself when everything around him screamed otherwise. The storm threatened to consume him, but Link took a deep breath and held fast to his purpose. With the quiet strength that had defined him, Link silenced the storm, realizing that the doubt was not his enemy. It was merely a shadow of fear that he needed to face head on. He would not be swayed by the doubts of others, nor would he falter in his mission. The final trial, however, would test Link like no other. It came as a confrontation with the very shadow of his own heart. The silence of the realm deepened, and in the stillness, Link saw a figure in the distance. The figure was him, his own reflection, but twisted, dark, and filled with malice. This shadowy version of Link was everything he feared he might become: the hero who failed, the one who abandoned Hyrule to its fate. This trial was not one of physical strength or quick thinking. It was one of emotional strength, of conviction. The shadow before him taunted him with the very idea of giving up, of turning away from his destiny. It spoke of the pain he had endured and the failures he feared. "You are no hero," the shadow said. "You are just a boy, lost in a world that will never accept you." But in the face of the darkness, Link found his strength. He was not the shadow. He was the light that had overcome it. With a firm grip on the Master's sword, Link faced the darkness within him and refused to let it define him. The shadow vanished, dissipating into the stillness, and Link was left standing, a hero unbroken. With the trials completed, Link stood at the heart of the silent realm, the air around him calm and clear. The trials of the soul had tested him in ways he had never imagined, but he had emerged stronger, more certain of his path. The silent realm, once a place of haunting silence, had transformed into the world of peaceful understanding. Link's journey through this place was not just one of external battle. It was a journey of self-discovery, of confronting his fears and doubts, and emerging with the clarity to face the challenges ahead. As you drift into sleep, dear listener, know that the journey of the hero is not just about fighting external enemies. Sometimes, the greatest battles are the ones fought within, against our fears, doubts, and the shadows of our past. But in facing them, we find the strength to carry on, to walk forward with courage in our hearts. After the trials of darkness and the shadowed days that nearly consumed Hyrule, there came a time of peace. The land, once ravaged by war and strife, had now entered a golden era, a time where prosperity flourished and the people of Hyrule began to rebuild what had been lost. It was a time of hope, a time where the heroes of the past could rest and the land could breathe freely again. But this peace, though long awaited and hard earned, was not to last forever. For even in the most tranquil times, darkness always seeks a way to return. This golden age, where light bathed the fields and the rivers sparkled with renewed life, was a gift. The hero who had once again saved Hyrule from the looming shadows was now an icon, his deeds etched into the very stones of the land. The Master's sword was carefully placed in its sacred resting place, a symbol of the hero's strength and courage. And Princess Zelda, as always, remained the heart of the kingdom, a ruler who guided her people with wisdom, compassion, and an unwavering sense of duty. But while the people of Hyrule rejoiced in their peace, a subtle shift had begun, unnoticed by the majority. The forces of darkness never truly disappeared. They merely waited, hidden beneath the surface, quietly stirring. The kingdom's prosperity had bred a certain complacency, and the very foundations of Hyrule's golden age were built upon the fragile belief that the darkness could never return. As the years passed, the story of the hero began to fade from living memory, becoming something akin to myth. The hero, who had once been a symbol of hope and resilience, was now seen as a distant legend. His name, though still whispered in the halls of the castle, became a tale told by the elders to the children, a story of the past. Yet the kingdom remained unaware of the threat looming on the horizon, one that would soon reveal itself in a form unlike any other. It was in this era of peace that the great temple of Hyrule, the heart of the kingdom's divine protection, began to show signs of age. The magical wards that had once kept the darkness at bay seemed to weaken, and the land's connection to the gods began to wane. The very forces that had once kept Hyrule safe were now beginning to slip from the grasp of the living. And with the fading power of the gods, a new darkness crept in, a force that would once again challenge the very soul of the kingdom. It was during this fragile time that a new threat rose from the shadows, one that was not born of the same malevolent evil as those who had come before it, but rather one that sought to destabilize Hyrule from within. This new villain was cunning, intelligent, and patient. His name was Ganondorf, and he came not with the brute force of monsters or armies, but with the subtle manipulation of the people and the political structures of Hyrule. Ganondorf was a figure that had long been overlooked, dismissed by the royal family and the people as a minor threat. But under his deceptive exterior, he harbored a deep desire for power, one that burned within him like an unquenchable fire. Unlike the heroes of Hyrule, who had fought for the protection of the people, Ganondorf sought only to gain control over Hyrule, to harness the power of the gods for his own selfish purposes. He began his campaign with quiet words, weaving himself into the fabric of the kingdom's politics. He approached the royal court, offering his services as a wise advisor. But behind his facade of loyalty, Ganondorf had other plans. He was patient, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Slowly, he began to sow discord among the leaders of Hyrule, undermining their authority and turning the people against each other. He whispered promises of power and control to those who were vulnerable, manipulating their fears and desires to his advantage. As the people of Hyrule began to turn on one another, the once thriving kingdom began to unravel. The divisions between the noble families grew wider, and the trust that had once united the people of Hyrule began to crumble. Ganondorf's power grew as he fed on the strife and unrest, his influence spreading like poison through the hearts of the people. He manipulated the very foundation of the kingdom, creating a web of deceit and treachery that would be difficult to unravel. The goddess Helia, who had watched over the kingdom for centuries, now found her influence waning. The people of Hyrule, so caught up in their own struggles, had forgotten the divine connection that once bound them to the gods. The power that had once protected Hyrule was now slipping away, leaving the land vulnerable to the forces of evil. In this time of peril, the people of Hyrule looked to their royal family for guidance, but the royal family too was divided. Princess Zelda, though wise and strong, found herself overwhelmed by the chaos that surrounded her. She could no longer see a clear path forward, and the kingdom seemed to teeter on the edge of ruin. The hope that had once burned bright in Hyrule now seemed like a distant memory, a flickering candle threatened by the winds of change. And yet, in the midst of this darkness, a new hero would rise, a hero who would stand against the forces of corruption and manipulation, a hero who would restore the hope that had once been the heart of Hyrule. This hero, though born in humble circumstances, would be called to take up the mantle of the legendary champions who had come before him. His name would be written into the very fabric of Hyrule's story, and his journey would become a tale for the ages. The Master Sword, though hidden away in the sacred temple, would once again be needed. It would be called forth by the hero, who would wield it with the strength and courage required to face the greatest enemy Hyrule had ever known. But the battle would not be an easy one. Ganondorf's power was formidable, and the very land itself seemed to turn against the hero. The darkness was pervasive, seeping into every corner of Hyrule, and only the light of the hero's heart could drive it back. As the hero journeyed through the land, seeking the strength to defeat the darkness, he would discover that the true power of Hyrule lay not in the gods themselves, but in the unity of its people. The land would only be restored when the people of Hyrule came together, when they set aside their differences and united in the name of peace and hope. As the story of Hyrule unfolded, it became clear that the Golden Age was not the end of the kingdom's story, but a chapter that would guide future generations. The hero's journey, like the legends before him, would echo through time, reminding the people of Hyrule that no darkness could ever extinguish the light of their hearts. The land of Hyrule, a kingdom of beauty and peace, was once again thrown into turmoil. The Golden Age, while a time of prosperity, had also bred complacency. As the years passed, the land of Hyrule found itself vulnerable to the forces of darkness. The Triforce, the sacred relic that had been the source of the god's power and the protector of the land, was once again in peril, and with it, the balance of light and dark that had always defined Hyrule was at risk of being destroyed. In this age of uncertainty, a new hero was called upon, a hero who would once again wield the Master Sword and embark on a journey that would shape the future of Hyrule. This hero would come from the same land that had known peace for so long, but his story would take him beyond the borders of the kingdom, into lands unknown and dangers unimaginable. This hero was not a stranger to Hyrule, but a child, a boy named Link, whose name would become synonymous with courage, hope, and the protection of the land. His journey, though young and unassuming at first, would carry him through the darkest corners of the world, into the very heart of evil itself. His trials would challenge not just his strength, but his heart, for the choices he made would echo through the ages. It was the day when Link, a young boy from the Kokiri forest, received his summons from destiny. The quiet, peaceful world he had known was shattered when a dark figure, Ganondorf, appeared from the shadows. Ganondorf, the evil sorcerer who sought to seize the power of the Triforce and conquer Hyrule, had already begun his march across the land. The kingdom was threatened, and the gods called upon Link to protect it. The goddess Helia's voice echoed in Link's heart, guiding him towards the great temple of time. It was here, in this sacred place, that the Master Sword, the blade that had once been wielded by great heroes, lay dormant, waiting for the Chosen One to awaken it. Link, though a mere child, was the one destined to wield the sword and stand against the darkness. But before Link could draw the sword, he had to prove his worth. The journey to reach the Temple of Time was not one of simple adventure, but one of self discovery. Link had to gather the sacred stones of the land, gems that represented the three aspects of the Triforce: courage, wisdom, and power. Along the way, he met allies who would help him on his journey: Princess Zelda, the wise and kind ruler of Hyrule, and the mystical sages who guarded the land's ancient secrets. But the path was not an easy one. Link faced trials that tested not only his skill, but his courage. He ventured through the dark forests of the Lost Woods, braved the depths of the Water Temple, and fought fierce monsters in the fiery depths of the Death Mountain. With each victory, Link grew stronger, but he also grew wiser. He learned that the journey was not just about defeating monsters or collecting stones, but about understanding his place in the grand tapestry of Hyrule's history. Through his trials, Link discovered that his role was not merely that of a hero in the traditional sense. He was not just the chosen one who would fight for Hyrule's survival. He was the guardian of the Triforce, the keeper of balance between light and dark. The Master Sword, which he would eventually draw from its resting place in the Temple of Time, was not just a weapon, but a symbol of this balance. It was a sword that could vanquish evil, but also a sword that could restore peace when wielded by a heart pure and strong. Yet, as Link's journey unfolded, a darker truth was revealed. As he journeyed through the lands, he discovered that Ganondorf was not just an ordinary evil sorcerer. He was a force of pure malice, bent on taking the Triforce for himself and using its power to destroy the world. He was more than just a conqueror, he was a destroyer, someone whose very presence threatened to unravel the very fabric of Hyrule. Link, in his quest to stop Ganondorf, was faced with the ultimate test. The Master Sword, though powerful, was not enough to defeat the evil that Ganondorf wielded. The hero had to gather the strength of the sages, whose powers would amplify Link's own abilities. And even then, the battle against Ganondorf would be unlike any that had come before. The sorcerer was ruthless, using every ounce of his dark power to manipulate the very land, calling forth terrible monsters and deadly storms to hinder Link's progress. As Link fought his way to the heart of Ganondorf's lair, he was faced with a profound choice: to defeat the evil at the cost of his own life, or to surrender and let Hyrule fall into the hands of darkness. The stakes were higher than ever before, but through the strength of his heart, the wisdom he had gained along his journey, and the courage that had been with him since the beginning, Link stood strong. With the Master Sword in hand, he confronted Ganondorf in the ultimate battle for Hyrule's soul. The battle was long and grueling, but in the end, Link prevailed. Ganondorf was defeated, and the Triforce was restored to its rightful place. But the victory came at a cost. The land was forever changed, and the people of Hyrule were left to rebuild once again. The hero, though victorious, was forever marked by the trials he had endured. The Master Sword, once a symbol of peace, had become a reminder of the darkness that could so easily return. As Link returned to the Temple of Time, he understood that his journey had not been about the defeat of one villain, but about the eternal struggle between light and dark. The Master Sword, though a tool of great power, was merely a symbol of the balance that existed in the world. And though the darkness had been defeated for now, the balance between light and dark would always remain, and the hero would always be called upon to protect it. And so, as you drift further into sleep, remember that the story of Link is not just the tale of one hero, it is the story of all heroes, the guardians of light who stand against the darkness. May the echoes of his journey remind you that even in the darkest times, courage, wisdom, and hope will always light the way. The story of Hyrule, like all great epics, is never a simple one. Its timeline is not linear, but rather a sprawling tapestry that stretches out into different realities, branching off in ways that the gods themselves had never predicted. The hero, whose story had once seemed so straightforward, now found himself standing at the crossroads of fate, where the path ahead splintered into three distinct futures. This is the tale of the split timeline, a moment when the fabric of Hyrule's destiny was torn and the kingdom was divided into three separate paths. The event that caused this division was as mysterious as it was momentous. After Link defeated Ganondorf, the evil sorcerer who had sought to conquer Hyrule, the land seemed to settle into a fragile peace. Yet even as the hero stood victorious, the gods knew that the balance of light and dark was not as secure as it seemed. The Triforce, the sacred relic that held the power of the three goddesses, was not a gift given lightly, and its influence on the world could never be entirely understood. In one timeline, Link's victory over Ganondorf would lead to a new age of peace and prosperity for Hyrule. The hero would continue his journey, and the land would heal from the wounds of the past. The Master Sword, though a symbol of victory, would be sealed away once more, and the people of Hyrule would live in relative peace, untouched by the darkness that had once threatened to consume them. However, in another timeline, Link's victory would not be enough to secure Hyrule's future. The battle with Ganondorf had taken a great toll on the land, and the damage done by the evil sorcerer's influence could not be easily undone. In this timeline, Link would be forced to leave the land he had once protected, to travel to unknown realms in search of a way to restore balance and protect Hyrule from the forces that sought to plunge it back into darkness. The third path was the most tragic, and it was one that would forever alter the destiny of Hyrule. In this reality, Link was not victorious. Ganondorf's dark power proved too great, and the hero was unable to prevent the sorcerer's final strike. The land fell into shadow, and Hyrule was lost to the darkness. In this timeline, there would be no hero to save the kingdom, and the story of Hyrule would become one of defeat and despair. Each of these timelines, though born from the same events, took Hyrule down drastically different paths. The consequences of these diverging realities would ripple through the ages, shaping the future of the kingdom in ways that none of the people of Hyrule could foresee. The gods, though silent in their observation, would continue to watch, knowing that the balance between light and dark could never be truly settled in a single lifetime. The hero's journey, it seemed, was never truly over. It was simply another chapter in the never-ending saga of Hyrule's fate. In the first timeline, the hero would continue to serve as the kingdom's protector, watching over the land and ensuring that it remained safe from the darkness. Princess Zelda, ever the wise and compassionate ruler, would stand beside him, guiding the kingdom with the wisdom of the gods. The Master Sword, though it had been used to defeat evil, would be sealed away once more, as the hero and the princess sought to rebuild the kingdom and prepare for whatever dangers might lie ahead. In the second timeline, Link's departure would mark a new chapter for Hyrule. Though the hero had fought valiantly, the damage done by Ganondorf's forces had left the land scarred. The people of Hyrule, though they had once known peace, would now live in a world full of uncertainty and fear. Link's absence would create a void, and the kingdom would look to new heroes to rise and take his place. But the road ahead was fraught with challenges, and the kingdom would face dangers both seen and unseen as the forces of darkness continued to seek out the Triforce and its power. In the third timeline, the tragedy of Ganondorf's victory would have lasting consequences. Hyrule, now consumed by shadow, would fall into chaos. The people who had once lived in harmony would now find themselves fighting for survival as the forces of evil swept across the land. With no hero to stand against them, the darkness would slowly take hold, and the once great kingdom of Hyrule would become a lost memory, a mere shadow of its former self. In this timeline, there would be no redemption, no hope, only the darkness that would consume everything. As the timelines split, the gods, though silent, knew that Hyrule's fate was not something that could be controlled. It was a story that unfolded over many generations, each new hero carrying the weight of the past while also forging a future of their own. The land would always need its protectors, its heroes, but the path of destiny was never certain. The Triforce, with all its power and influence, could never guarantee peace for Hyrule, only the promise that the battle between light and dark would continue, forever shifting, forever changing. As the echo of the hero's journey reverberated through time, the people of Hyrule would come to understand that their world was not a simple one. It was a land shaped by the choices of its heroes, a land that would always be in flux, where each decision, each action would ripple through the ages and create new timelines, new realities. The hero's journey, like the land itself, would never truly end. It would simply take on new forms, new faces, and new stories. And so, as you drift deeper into your dreams, dear listener, remember that the journey of Hyrule is not just one of light and darkness. It is a journey that is always unfolding, always evolving. The choices we make, the paths we take, will shape our own destinies. Like the hero of time, we are all on our own journeys, and though the future may seem uncertain, we can take comfort in the fact that we are not alone. The light, no matter how faint, will always guide us home. In the aftermath of the events that had shaped Hyrule's destiny, the kingdom entered a time of rebuilding. The people of the land had fought valiantly against the darkness, but the toll of their struggles had left a scar upon the kingdom's heart. In the wake of the hero's victories, however, there were those who still struggled with the lingering shadow, those whose journeys were far from over. One such journey would take a different form, a journey not of light, but of dark reflection. The hero of time, Link, after his victory over Ganondorf, sought respite. He needed to rest and recover from the trials that had shaped his life. His journey had taken him across the vast lands of Hyrule, and now, at last, the hero could afford to step away, to walk the path of peace. But peace is often elusive, and it was not long before the hero found himself drawn into another land, one far removed from the familiar sights of Hyrule. This land, called Termina, was a place unlike Hyrule, a place where the boundaries between life and death, reality and illusion, blurred in ways that could not be easily understood. It was here that Link encountered his greatest trial since the defeat of Ganondorf. The land of Termina was in turmoil, for the moon, a massive and terrifying force, hung ominously over the land, threatening to crash into the world and destroy all in its path. This moon, unlike any celestial body that had ever been seen, was not a natural occurrence. It was a harbinger of doom, and it was controlled by a dark and powerful being known only as Majora. Majora's Mask, the dark artifact that bore the essence of an ancient and malevolent spirit, had taken control of the moon and used it to bring about the end of Termina. The people of the land were helpless, for they had no knowledge of the evil that threatened them, no way to stop the impending catastrophe. They lived in fear, watching as the days ticked away, knowing that they had little time before the moons would fall, bringing their world to an end. But Link, the hero of time, could not ignore the cries of the people. Once again, he was called upon to take up the mantle of the hero. Yet this time, the journey would not be as straightforward as it had been before. In Termina, Link found himself facing a different kind of enemy, an enemy not just of physical power, but of emotions and souls. Majora's Mask had taken root deep within the fabric of the land, weaving chaos and despair into the very core of Termina's existence. The hero's challenge was not merely to defeat a villain, but to uncover the source of the land's anguish and undo the curse that had taken hold. The journey that Link embarked upon in Termina was not one of straightforward battles or quests for magical relics. Instead, it was a journey through time itself. The hero discovered that in Termina, the world was trapped in a perpetual 3-day cycle. No matter how many times Link tried to thwart the moon's descent, time reset itself, bringing him back to the beginning of the cycle. The once familiar world of Hyrule seemed distant now, replaced by a strange and eerie land where the rules of time and space no longer applied. Link's quest was to break this cycle, to uncover the mysteries of Termina, and to stop Majora from destroying the land. But as he traveled through Termina's towns, forests, and mountains, he encountered not just the remnants of evil, but the broken spirits of those who had lived there. The people of Termina were caught in their own cycles of despair, unable to move forward because of the looming threat that hung over their world. Each of them had a story of pain, regret, and lost hope. Yet it was in these stories that Link began to understand the true nature of Majora's Mask. The mask was not just a source of power, it was a reflection of the people's own fears and desires. It fed on their darkest emotions, their grief, and their desires for control. Majora's Mask had taken the broken pieces of their souls and magnified them, turning the people's pain into a force of destruction. To defeat Majora, Link had to confront not just the mask, but the sorrow that lay within the hearts of the people. As Link ventured through Termina, he found himself caught in a web of time. The repeating 3-day cycle forced him to relive the same events over and over again, each time trying to change the outcome. He saw the same faces, the same scenes, the same moments of despair. But with each cycle, Link grew stronger. He learned to unlock the secrets of the land, to face the trials that stood in his way, and to confront the darkness within himself. With each passing day, Link grew closer to the truth. He faced the trials of the 4 great temples, each one hidden within the land's most remote and dangerous corners. Each temple held its own challenge, testing Link's courage, wisdom, and strength. But even as he conquered these trials, the looming threat of the moon continued to hover over him, reminding him that time was running out. It was only when Link confronted Majora in the heart of the land that he truly understood the nature of the mask. Majora was not just an evil spirit, but a manifestation of the chaos that had taken root in the hearts of the people. To defeat Majora, Link had to confront the pain of the past and bring peace to the troubled land. The battle was not one of sheer might, but of understanding and healing. Link's victory was not just over the mask, but over the cycles of fear and grief that had held Termina in its grip. With Majora defeated, the moon's descent was halted and Termina was saved. But the victory was bittersweet. The land had been restored, but the people's pain remained. The journey had been one of healing, but it was also one of loss. Link had learned that even the greatest hero cannot always change the past, and that sometimes the greatest strength lies in letting go. As Link left Termina behind, the land began to heal. The people, though forever scarred by the events that had unfolded, would slowly rebuild, and Link, the hero of time, continued on his journey, knowing that his role as protector was far from over. The mask had been destroyed, but the cycle of light and dark would always remain. And so, as you drift deeper into sleep, dear listener, remember that even in the darkest times, there is always hope. The cycle of light and dark is eternal, but so is the light that rises from within us all. Just as Link faced the darkness of Majora's Mask and emerged victorious, so too can we face our own trials with courage, knowing that the light will always shine through the darkness. The tides of time have a way of sweeping all things forward, and after the trials that had shaken Hyrule to its core, the kingdom found itself standing on the precipice of a new world. The once great kingdom of Hyrule, ravaged by the forces of darkness, had disappeared beneath the waves, leaving behind only echoes of a past that would never be reclaimed. The land had sunk, its castles and fields lost to the sea, but Hyrule's story was far from over. In its place, a new Hyrule was born, one that would rise from the ashes of the old and sail forward into a horizon that held both promise and peril. The hero who would guide Hyrule into this new age was no longer the boy who had fought on the land. This time, the hero would be a young man named Link, who would embark on a journey across a vast ocean to find the remnants of the kingdom and uncover the mysteries of the past. The land of Hyrule was no longer a place of sprawling fields and towering castles. It had become a sea of islands, scattered across an endless expanse of water. The old world had drowned, but the light of its history still flickered in the hearts of the people who had survived. Link, now a sailor at heart, was called to action by the sight of a great bird, one that bore the Triforce symbol upon its back. This bird was a messenger sent by the goddesses to guide Link on his quest. It was a sign that Hyrule's story was not over, and that the hero who had once saved the kingdom would once again rise to protect it. The ocean that spread before Link was vast and uncharted, filled with islands both known and unknown. These islands were home to remnants of Hyrule's past, each one holding secrets and treasures that could bring hope or despair. The water was both a blessing and a curse, a reminder of the kingdom that had been lost and the promise of a future that had yet to be written. Link, though young, would come to understand that the ocean held the key to Hyrule's rebirth, and that the past would not simply fade away. Link's journey across the ocean was one of discovery. He traveled to the Great Sea, where the remnants of the ancient kingdom lay beneath the waves. He explored the islands, each one with its own history, each one holding clues to the fate of Hyrule. Some islands were peaceful, their shores touched by the wind and the sun, while others were filled with danger, home to monsters and dark forces that sought to keep the past hidden. But through it all, Link was guided by the same courage that had led him through every trial he had faced. The hero's heart never faltered, and the wind in his sails carried him forward. It was on one of these islands that Link encountered the first of the great sages, those who had once protected the land of Hyrule. These sages, though aged and weary, still held the wisdom of the ancient kingdom within them. They revealed to Link that the power of the Triforce had not been lost. It had been hidden away, buried beneath the ocean, waiting for the hero to come and claim it once more. But the Triforce was not a simple artifact. It was a symbol of the balance between the three goddesses, and its power could only be wielded by one who understood its true meaning. Link's journey would lead him to the heart of the ocean, where he would face a final trial that would determine the fate of Hyrule. This trial would test not only his strength, but his understanding of the Triforce itself. To claim the power of the Triforce, Link would have to prove his worth, not just as a warrior, but as a leader, as a protector of the people. The Triforce would not grant its power to one who sought it for personal gain. It would only grant its power to one who sought it to restore balance to the land. The final confrontation took place on an island that rose from the depths of the ocean, its peaks reaching into the sky. The island was surrounded by the dark forces of the sea, and it was here that Link would face his greatest challenge. The evil that had once threatened Hyrule had returned in the form of Ganondorf, the same dark sorcerer who had sought to conquer the kingdom in the past. But now, Ganondorf's power had been magnified by the Triforce, and he was more dangerous than ever before. Link, armed with the Master Sword, faced Ganondorf in a battle that spanned both land and sea. The clash of their swords echoed across the ocean, the forces of light and dark waging their eternal battle once again. But this time, the hero was not alone. He was surrounded by the memories of those who had come before him, the sages, the people of Hyrule, and the legacy of the goddess Hylia herself. With the power of the Triforce in his heart, Link fought not just for himself, but for the land he loved, for the people he swore to protect. In the end, Link was victorious. Ganondorf, though powerful, could not withstand the strength of the hero's heart. With a final strike, the dark sorcerer was defeated, and the balance of light and dark was restored. The Triforce, once again, was in the hands of those who would use its power wisely. Hyrule was reborn, not in the form of the kingdom that had once stood, but in a new era, one where the past and the future were forever intertwined. As Link sailed away from the island, the winds carried him forward into a new horizon. The ocean, once a symbol of loss, had become a symbol of hope. The hero had not only restored Hyrule's future, but had also rekindled the spirit of adventure that had always been at the heart of the kingdom. The golden age of Hyrule had been reborn, and the legacy of the hero would continue for generations to come. And so, as you drift into sleep, dear listener, remember that even in the darkest of times, there is always a new horizon on the horizon. The hero's journey is never truly over, and the light of hope will always guide us forward, no matter how far the journey may seem. The winds of time are ever changing, and with each new cycle, Hyrule finds itself teetering between the light and the dark. In the wake of the hero's journey across the Great Sea and the victory over Ganondorf, a new era began to unfold, one where the hero of time was remembered as a legend of the past. Yet, even as the kingdom rebuilt, the shadows of darkness that had once threatened Hyrule continued to linger at the edges of the world, ready to strike when the people least expected it. The calm that followed the hero's victory was not one of permanent peace. In the distant reaches of Hyrule, far from the bustling cities and thriving lands, a new force began to stir. The land of Hyrule had been preserved by the power of the goddess Hylia, but now, with the fading of her direct influence and the lapse of time, the balance between light and shadow once again teetered on the edge of destruction. Hyrule was again at risk of falling into darkness, and the hero would once again be called upon to rise. This time, the hero was no longer the same boy who had traveled across the oceans. Link, the once young hero of time, had grown. Now, a man in his prime, he was again summoned, not just to protect Hyrule, but to confront a new evil that sought to plunge the kingdom into eternal twilight. The land, though recovering, still carried the remnants of the past, and its people found themselves increasingly drawn to a world shrouded in shadow. A dark force known as the Twilight Realm began to creep across the land, threatening to engulf everything in its wake. In this new age, the hero's journey would not just be one of physical trials. The world of Hyrule had changed since the hero's last battle, and Link would soon discover that the battle against darkness was not just external, it was something that touched the very heart of Hyrule itself. The Twilight Realm, a parallel dimension that existed alongside Hyrule, had once been separated from the world of light. But as the boundary between the realms began to weaken, the dark forces of the Twilight Realm began to spill into Hyrule, warping its lands and creatures. It was in this period of growing turmoil that Link, the hero, was once again called to action. This time, he would not only fight to save Hyrule from the external forces of darkness, but would also confront a new reality, one where the very essence of Hyrule was at stake. The land's connection to its past, its divine protectors, and its people was now in jeopardy. The hero would need to reclaim the light not just for the kingdom, but for the souls of the people who had lost their way. At the beginning of his journey, Link found himself once again in the peaceful land he had once known, the quiet village of Orden, nestled at the foot of Death Mountain. This familiar place, which had once been a haven for the young hero, was now a mere reflection of the past. The village was under threat by the dark forces of the Twilight Realm, and Link found himself thrust into the struggle once more. This time, however, there was a difference. The land itself had been altered by the twilight, and Link soon discovered that the evil forces that sought to take Hyrule were more insidious than he had imagined. As the Twilight Realm began to spread, Link was transformed in a way that he had never expected. The dark magic of the realm had a profound effect on him, and he was pulled into the shadow world, forced to confront the horrors within. His transformation into a wolf, The curse of the Twilight Realm was both a symbol of his battle with the darkness and a reminder of the depth of the struggle that lay ahead. Though he was cursed, Link's heart remained unbroken. He soon encountered Midna, a mysterious and enigmatic figure who would become both his ally and guide. Midna, though initially distant and cryptic, revealed that she was a princess of the Twilight Realm, exiled by the dark forces that had taken over her kingdom. Her power and knowledge would be critical in Link's quest, and together they would seek to restore the balance between light and shadow. The curse that Link had suffered in the Twilight Realm was not just a physical transformation, but a symbolic representation of the internal struggle he faced. As a wolf, Link was forced to confront his own fears and limitations. He was cut off from the people and the land that had once known him as a hero, and yet it was in this transformation that he found a new strength. His journey would require him to learn new skills, to rely on his instincts, and to find the courage to embrace the darkness within and rise above it. As Link and Midna journeyed through the land, they discovered that the dark forces that sought to consume Hyrule were led by Zant, the king of the Twilight Realm, who had usurped control of the realm and sought to merge it with the world of light. Zant, a powerful and twisted figure, had unleashed the dark magic of the Twilight Realm upon Hyrule, seeking to conquer both worlds and plunge them into an endless night. The land was filled with the remnants of this dark power, monsters, corruptions, and illusions that threatened to overwhelm everything. Link's quest led him across Hyrule to the farthest reaches of the kingdom. From the sacred temples hidden in the heart of the land to the dark, cursed forests of the Twilight Realm, Link faced new challenges that tested his strength, wisdom, and courage. He was forced to seek the aid of the ancient sages, beings who had long guarded the land's secrets. These sages, who had once been the protectors of Hyrule, were now the last line of defense against the growing darkness. The trials Link faced in this new era were not only physical, they were emotional as well. He was forced to confront the true nature of his connection to Hyrule, to the people he had once protected, and to the very land he had sworn to defend. He was no longer just a hero of the past. He was a hero of the present, and his choices would determine the future of the land. The battle against Zant was one of both strength and wisdom. Link had to navigate through Zant's illusions, uncovering the true nature of the curse that had taken hold of Hyrule. But in the end, it was the bond between Link and Midna, between light and dark, that would lead them to victory. The hero's journey was not just about fighting external forces, it was about restoring the light within the hearts of the people and reclaiming the kingdom from the darkness that sought to consume it. With Zant defeated, the Twilight Realm was restored to its rightful place, and Hyrule was saved once again. But the cost of victory was not small. The bond between Link and Midna, though deep, had come at a price. Midna, in her final act, sacrificed herself to ensure the safety of the kingdom, leaving behind a world forever changed. And so, the hero of time returned once more, not to a land of perfect peace, but to a world forever shaped by the choices he made. Hyrule would continue to grow, and its heroes would rise and fall with the tide of time. But through it all, the light of courage, wisdom, and hope would always guide the way. In the sky, above the vast oceans and the craggy mountains of Hyrule, there existed a kingdom untouched by time, a kingdom where the winds carried the stories of the gods, and the heavens themselves seemed to pulse with the promise of adventure. This was the land of the gods, a realm where the goddesses watched over the world, unseen but ever present. And from this land, a hero would rise, one who would forge the very destiny of Hyrule and reshape the future with the power of the skies. This hero was none other than Link, though this Link was different from the ones who had come before. He was not yet the legendary warrior who would rise to protect Hyrule, nor was he the hero who would travel across vast oceans to reclaim the kingdom. This hero's journey began long before the conflicts of the land, in a world of clouds and soaring skies. Skyward Sword, as this tale would come to be known, was not just a story of physical conflict, but a tale of love, of sacrifice, and of the bonds that tie all things together. It was a story of the very origin of the Master Sword and the creation of the eternal battle between light and dark. And at the center of it all was a goddess who, despite her divine power, was bound by the same mortal concerns as those she protected. The story began in the floating land of Skyloft, a serene and isolated world of islands suspended in the skies. The people of Skyloft, known as Loftby, lived in harmony with the creatures of the skies, especially the Loftwings, majestic birds that served as companions and mounts. These creatures were the guardians of Skyloft, and the people trusted them with their lives. But it was not just the Loftbees who called the skies home. The kingdom of the gods, the realm of the goddess Helia, existed in the heavens, above and beyond the reach of mortal hands. The goddess Hylia, long associated with the Triforce, was the protector of the world, and her influence reached into the very hearts of the people who lived in Skyloft. Yet even in the presence of the gods, there existed a constant threat to the balance between light and dark. Beneath the clouds, a dark force stirred, a force that threatened to tear the very fabric of existence apart. This force, born of hatred and darkness, was known as Demise. Demise was the physical manifestation of evil, a being of pure malice whose only desire was to conquer the world and take control of the Triforce. Though Demise had been defeated before, his influence could never be completely eradicated, and he found a way to return to the world of the living, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to the creation of the Master Sword. As the land of Skyloft remained untouched by the world below, a young boy named Link lived with his best friend, Zelda. Zelda was not just any ordinary girl. She was the chosen descendant of the goddess Hylia, the one who was destined to play a critical role in the struggle between light and dark. She was a powerful figure, one who could wield the power of the goddess herself. But despite her divine connection, Zelda was unaware of the enormity of the role she would play in the events that were about to unfold. Link, too, was unaware of his own destiny. He was a young, ambitious boy who had spent his life training to become a knight, eager to prove his worth. However, his true calling would not be found in the lands of Skyloft, but in the faraway land below, the land of Hyrule. One fateful day, as the two friends prepared for the wing ceremony, a tradition where the young men and women of Skyloft competed to prove their worth, the peaceful world of Skyloft was torn apart. A storm, unlike any that had ever been seen, erupted in the skies, and from this storm descended a powerful creature, a monstrous being that carried with it the spirit of Demise himself. This dark force stole Zelda away, taking her to the land below, and in doing so, set in motion a journey that would forever alter the fate of both the hero and the kingdom. Link, heartbroken and determined to save Zelda, took up his sword and embarked on a journey into the unknown. He was no longer just a boy from Skyloft. He was a hero, a champion chosen by fate to protect the land and the goddess who guided it. Armed with the Master Sword, a legendary weapon that could vanquish the forces of evil, Link descended into the land below, where he would face trials and challenges unlike any he had ever imagined. The journey was long and perilous. Link traversed vast deserts, fought his way through dark forests, and navigated treacherous waters. Each step brought him closer to the heart of the land, where the goddess, Helia, had once walked, and where the battle between light and dark had raged for centuries. Along the way, Link encountered many powerful beings, each one a potential ally or enemy, and each with their own stake in the war between good and evil. Yet even as Link continued his journey, he felt a deep connection to the land, as though the very earth beneath his feet called out to him. He realized that the struggle against demise was not just one of physical battles, but of understanding the ancient forces that shaped the world. The Master Sword, though powerful, was but a tool. Its true strength lay in the heart of the hero who wielded it. As Link moved closer to his ultimate goal, the final confrontation with demise, he discovered that the battle was not just against an external enemy, but against the darkness that resided within every soul. The fight for the Triforce, for the goddess's power, was not simply a war for control. It was a battle for balance, for understanding, and for the very soul of Hyrule. In the final moments, as Link stood face to face with demise, he understood the true nature of his journey. The Master Sword, infused with the power of the gods, was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of the hero's heart, of the love and courage that had guided him all along. The hero's strength did not lie in his sword or in his battle tactics. It lay in his ability to protect the land, to fight not for power, but for peace. With a final, decisive strike, Link defeated demise, banishing the darkness that had sought to consume the world. But the victory was bittersweet. The land of Hyrule, though saved, was forever changed. The goddess Hylia's presence had faded, and the Master Sword, once a symbol of the god's power, was sealed away once more. Yet the hero's journey was far from over. Hyrule would need its protectors, its champions, and its heroes. And as long as the light of courage, wisdom, and strength remained, the battle between light and dark would continue to be fought. Hyrule, a kingdom shaped by countless trials and battles, had weathered the storms of time and war, each era of light and dark weaving a story of its own. And yet, even after centuries of peace, after the cycles of heroes and villains, the kingdom found itself once again teetering on the brink of destruction. The darkness that had always lingered in the shadows was now creeping forward, not with the force of a single villain, but as an overwhelming tide of uncertainty. The future of Hyrule was no longer certain, and the hero who would rise to face it would not be the one of legend or prophecy. He would be a new kind of hero, shaped by the land itself. This is the tale of the hero who would save a broken world, Link, the hero of the wild. The once great kingdom of Hyrule lay in ruins. Its towering castles, its bustling villages, its peaceful fields, all were now just memories, reduced to rubble by the cataclysmic forces that had swept through the land. The Triforce, the source of the god's power, had been lost to time, and with it, much of the magic that had once protected the kingdom. The sky, once clear and bright, was now overcast, the air thick with the weight of despair. And as the land cried out for help, the last hope of Hyrule lay in the hands of a single hero, a young man who had lost his memories and found himself facing a world he could not fully comprehend. Link, the hero who had once wielded the Master Sword, was now a stranger in a land that no longer recognized him. He had awoken from a deep slumber, his body broken and scarred, his mind clouded by the weight of a century-long sleep. He did not know what had happened to Hyrule, nor why he had been brought back to life. All he knew was that the kingdom was in peril, and he was the only one who could restore it. The forces that had once been so easily defeated by the hero of time, the hero of the Twilight Realm, and the hero of the sea were now much more insidious. This time, the darkness did not take the form of a single villain, but of an all-consuming force known as Calamity Ganon, a malevolent spirit whose very presence twisted the land, turning it into a place of death and decay. Ganon's power was no longer bound by a single body, but had become a spreading plague that corrupted everything it touched. It was a darkness that consumed not only the land, but the hearts of those who had once lived in peace. Link's journey began with a simple goal: to seek out the truth behind the fall of Hyrule and stop the evil that had ravaged it. But the hero was no longer the young boy who had once traveled the land with a sword in hand and a destiny in his heart. In this world, Link had to learn to survive, not only against the forces of darkness, but also against the harshness of the world itself. The land was unforgiving, its beasts more deadly, its challenges more complex than ever before. The journey was no longer one of simple heroism. It was a battle for survival, for memory, and for hope. Link's first step was to reclaim the tools of his past, the weapons and armor that would help him survive in the harsh wilderness of Hyrule. Yet even as he fought to recover his strength, he discovered that the land had changed, and so had the people. Those few survivors who still lived in the kingdom were no longer the simple villagers of old. They were hardened, survivors of a world that had crumbled, each one carrying their own scars, each one struggling to keep their hope alive. In his travels, Link encountered the remnants of the royal family, led by Princess Zelda, the last remaining heir of Hyrule's royal bloodline. But Zelda, too, had been changed by the devastation. She was no longer the young princess who had once guided Link with her wisdom and kindness. She had become a warrior in her own right, having fought for years against the calamity, trying to keep the remnants of the kingdom together. The bond between Zelda and Link, once so strong, had been fractured by the events of the past, and now they both found themselves trying to piece together a broken world. Together, they ventured through the ruins of Hyrule, fighting against the forces of Calamity Ganon and the twisted monsters that roamed the land. The journey was not easy, and the road ahead was long. But with each trial they faced, they uncovered more about the kingdom's fall and the role they would play in its resurrection. Link's strength was not just in his sword or his skill with a bow, it was in his resilience, his ability to endure when all hope seemed lost. He was not just a hero of the past, he was a hero of the present, carrying the weight of a kingdom's future on his shoulders. As Link ventured across the vast fields of Hyrule, he found that the land had not been entirely lost. Though the kingdom had fallen, its spirit remained. The ancient temples that once housed the power of the gods still stood, hidden beneath the rubble and the creeping tendrils of darkness. Link's quest was not just to defeat Ganon, it was to uncover the lost power of the goddesses and restore the balance that had once protected Hyrule. His journey took him into the heart of the kingdom, where the ruins of the castle stood as a silent testament to Hyrule's former glory. Here, he faced his final trial, a battle not against the forces of Calamity Ganon, but against the very essence of destruction that had consumed the kingdom. The final battle was one of sacrifice, where Link had to summon every ounce of courage and strength he had to defeat the evil that had once again risen to threaten Hyrule. In the end, Link emerged victorious. Ganon was defeated, the land was freed from the Calamity's grip, and Hyrule began to rebuild. But the hero's journey was far from over, for the kingdom, though saved, had been forever changed. The memory of the past would live on in the hearts of those who survived, and Link, the hero of the wild, would continue to protect the kingdom from whatever new darkness would inevitably arise. As the sun rose over the restored kingdom of Hyrule, the winds carried a new hope across the land. The hero, though weary, had fulfilled his destiny. But as long as the light of courage, wisdom, and strength burned in the hearts of the people, the story of Hyrule would continue. The hero's journey was never truly over. It would be passed down through the generations, each new hero carrying the mantle of those who came before. And so, dear listener, as you drift into your dreams, remember that the hero's journey is not just a tale of light versus darkness. It is a story of resilience, of hope in the face of despair, and of the strength to rise again, no matter how many times the world falls. The cycle of light and dark, of hope and despair, has always been the defining essence of Hyrule. Each era, whether filled with prosperity or fraught with conflict, is merely another chapter in a long, unbroken chain of events that stretches through time. And even in the moments of peace that follow great battles, there is a reminder that the balance between good and evil is delicate, ever shifting, and fragile. Hyrule, though temporarily at rest, would once again find itself on the cusp of a great trial. Years after the battle that had freed the kingdom from the calamity, the people of Hyrule thought they could finally rest. Their hope, though tempered by past struggles, was a light in the darkness that had once surrounded them. The hero of the wild, Link, had once again proven that with courage and strength, even the most overwhelming evil could be defeated. But as with all things in Hyrule, the shadows never fully fade. They merely wait, patient, biding their time. And so, the echoes of the past began to stir once more. The dark forces that had once plagued the kingdom were not vanquished, nor had they ever truly been destroyed. Beneath the surface, hidden away in forgotten corners of the land, ancient evils stirred, forces that had been defeated before, but whose roots ran deep. The land of Hyrule had healed, but its wounds had not been completely forgotten. The people, content with their peace, had unknowingly allowed the darkness to return. It was during a quiet season, when the wind carried the promise of spring, that the first signs of the looming threat began to surface. A strange sickness spread through the land. Crops began to wither, animals grew ill, and the very earth itself seemed to sigh in discomfort. The people whispered of the return of an ancient curse, a dark force that had once again begun to creep from the shadows. This time, it was not a single villain, but a manifestation of pure malice, a darkness that had always been tied to the land, a part of its history that could never truly be erased. It was in these dark moments that the hero once again felt the call to action. Link, though weary from past battles, could not ignore the disturbance in the air, the faint but undeniable stirring of something dangerous. The land itself was calling to him, warning him of the dark forces that had returned to Hyrule. But this time, the darkness was not as it had been before. It was no longer just the work of one villain or one army. It was a deep, pervasive evil rooted in the very fabric of Hyrule's past. This force had been buried beneath layers of time, and now it was beginning to resurface, threatening to tear apart the peace that had been carefully built. Link understood that this new threat was far greater than the forces of darkness he had faced in the past. It was a force that would test not just his strength, but the very spirit of the kingdom. Link's journey began in the familiar places of Hyrule, the fields, the forests, the villages that had once been home to its people. But this time, the land felt different. The once vibrant colors of the fields had faded to dull, muted tones. The air, once crisp and fresh, now felt heavy with a sense of foreboding. The people of Hyrule had not seen the evil that was lurking beneath the surface, but Link could feel it, an ancient power, one that had been dormant for centuries, stirring from its long slumber. The hero's path took him across the kingdom once again, to places he had visited before, but this time they were different. The forests, once filled with life, now seemed dark and oppressive, their shadows stretching unnaturally long. The mountains, once majestic and towering, now felt like silent watchers, as if the very earth was holding its breath. Everywhere Link went, he found signs of the encroaching darkness, twisted creatures that had once been peaceful animals, trees that had withered and died, and people whose faces had grown hollow with fear. As Link ventured deeper into the heart of the kingdom, he uncovered the source of the darkness, the return of Ganon. Unlike the past, where Ganon had been a single entity, this time his presence was far more subtle, more pervasive. It was as if his very spirit had seeped into the land itself, infecting it, twisting it, and turning Hyrule into a reflection of his own malice. Ganon's influence was no longer bound to a single body. It had become a part of the land, and as long as Hyrule existed, so too would his darkness. But Link, though weary, was not disheartened. He knew that his duty was to protect the kingdom, and if it meant facing Ganon once more, he would do so with all the courage in his heart. The Master Sword, though dormant for years, was once again called upon. It would not be just a weapon, it would be a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in a world that seemed to be falling into shadow. The battle against Ganon's influence would not be one of brute strength alone. Link would need to gather allies, to unite the people of Hyrule against the growing darkness. The kingdom, though scarred by its past, still held hope in its heart. It was this hope, this unity, that would be the key to defeating the shadow that had taken root. Link's journey took him into the heart of Hyrule, where he found the remnants of the Triforce, the sacred relic that had once shaped the fate of the kingdom. The Triforce, though lost to time, still held immense power. It was said that whoever could unite the three pieces of the Triforce, courage, wisdom, and power, would have the strength to reshape the world. But the Triforce was not an artifact to be taken lightly. It had been the source of much suffering, much bloodshed, and much sorrow. Its power, when wielded by the wrong hands, could destroy everything. As Link faced this new challenge, he realized that this battle was not just about defeating Ganon, it was about restoring balance to the world. The darkness that had once been banished was now part of the very soul of Hyrule, and only by confronting it could the hero hope to save the kingdom. With the help of his allies, Link would face Ganon's minions, defeat the Chiss evil sorcerers who served him, and restore the Triforce to its rightful place. The final confrontation would not be in the castle or in the heart of a dark temple. It would be in the very soul of Hyrule, where the balance between light and dark was forever intertwined. As Link fought the final battle against the darkness, he found that the true strength of Hyrule lay not in its kings or its gods, but in the hearts of its people. Together, they stood against the forces of evil, united by their love for the land they called home. And in the end, it was this unity that proved to be stronger than any darkness. The hero had once again saved the kingdom, but the true lesson of this battle was that Hyrule's future was not written in the past. It was in the hands of its people. The light would always return, as long as the spirit of courage, wisdom, and power remained in the hearts of those who chose to protect it. The story of Hyrule, with all its cycles of light and dark, is a tale that stretches beyond any single hero, beyond any single moment in time. Each era, each kingdom, and each challenge has its own place in the greater tapestry of the world, a world where the forces of light and darkness are eternally at odds. And while the heroes rise to defend their land, their names, and their deeds, they are but the threads that bind the story together, a never-ending saga that carries the weight of history and the future alike. In this new chapter, after the events of the Calamity and the restoration of Hyrule, there arose an undeniable question. What happens when the hero is no longer needed, when the cycle of time has run its course and peace reigns once again? Hyrule, restored and rebuilt, could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But even in the peace that came with victory, there was always the understanding that the dark forces would rise again. They always do. The kingdom had long been a beacon of light, its people flourishing under the protection of the goddesses. The once familiar fields of Hyrule, where the grass swayed in the wind and the rivers gleamed under the sun, now held the traces of ancient power, traces of a kingdom that had fallen only to rise again. The people, though strong and wise, understood the fragile nature of peace. They knew that the balance between light and dark was something that could never truly be secured. It was something that had to be constantly guarded. With the defeat of Calamity Ganon and the fall of the darkness that had corrupted Hyrule for so long, there was a new sense of hope. Yet with it came the knowledge that the evil forces that had once plagued the land could return again in another form. The people of Hyrule, though free from the grasp of Ganon's dark magic, understood that the cycle of time would continue. And so, Link, the hero who had seen Hyrule through many trials and tribulations, knew that his journey was far from over. The Master Sword, once a symbol of his triumph, now stood as a monument to the eternal struggle. Though it had been used to banish darkness, it was still a reminder that the forces of evil would always rise again. The hero's role was not simply to fight against evil, but to protect the balance that kept Hyrule alive. Zelda, too, had learned that the fight for Hyrule's future was one that would never truly end. Though the goddess Helia's protection still lingered over the kingdom, the power of the goddesses was no longer as present in the world. As the Triforce had once been the source of peace, so too was it now a symbol of the fragile peace that would forever need to be guarded. Zelda's wisdom had guided Hyrule through its darkest times, but she knew that her role as the protector of the land would need to adapt to the changing world. As time passed, the kingdom of Hyrule would once again be tested by the forces of darkness. Though the people had been restored to their homes, there would always be the ever present knowledge that the darkness that had once threatened to destroy Hyrule would not be so easily kept at bay. Yet it was in the face of this certainty that the people of Hyrule found their strength. For the battle against evil was not just about swordplay, not just about defeating the monstrous forces that came from the shadows. It was about protecting the land, protecting the memories of the heroes who had come before. It was about keeping the flame of hope alive, even when the shadows seemed to close in from all sides. And it was in this spirit that Hyrule, even in its darkest hours, would endure. And so, a new chapter in the story of Hyrule began, a chapter where the balance between light and dark was not just a battle between enemies, but a challenge to the very nature of time itself. In this new era, Hyrule's destiny would not be shaped by one hero, but by the collective will of the people, their strength drawn from the past, but focused on the future. The darkness would always seek to return, but so too would the light. For Hyrule was not just a kingdom, it was a symbol of the enduring spirit of its people, of their hope, their courage, and their wisdom. The Triforce, though divided among its three pieces, remained a symbol of the kingdom's strength, and in its heart, the Master Sword stood as the eternal guardian, its blade not just a weapon, but a reminder that the balance between good and evil would never be easy, but it was a balance that could be maintained through the will of the people. Link's role was not just to fight against the forces of darkness, but to ensure that Hyrule remained free, that its people remained strong. The hero was not just the one who carried the Master Sword, it was every person who stood against the shadows, who worked to preserve the peace, and who sought to protect the land from the ever-present threat of evil. As Link continued his journey, this time not just as a lone warrior, but as a symbol of the collective spirit of Hyrule, he found that his strength came not from his sword or his shield, but from the people around him. The kingdom was no longer just a land of kings and queens, heroes and villains. It was a place where every individual had a role to play, where the future was shaped by the actions of all, not just a single person. And so, as the sun set on another day in Hyrule, the wind carried a sense of peace, a peace that would never be permanent, but one that could always be fought for. For the people of Hyrule, the battle against the darkness was not just one of violence, but one of understanding, compassion, and hope. As Link continued to protect the land, he understood that the true victory was not in vanquishing evil, but in keeping the light alive. The people of Hyrule would continue to face the darkness, but as long as they remained united, they would always find the strength to stand against it. The Master Sword would remain sharp, the Triforce would continue to guide them, and Hyrule's spirit would live on. The story of Hyrule is an ancient one, stretching back through the sands of time, a tale woven with the threads of countless heroes, battles, and triumphs. Each hero who rose to protect the kingdom left behind their mark, etched into the hearts of the people and into the land itself. The legends of these heroes lived on, but the world of Hyrule was not static. It was a living world, constantly evolving and changing. The echoes of the past were always present, but the future lay ahead, shaped by the actions of those who would inherit the legacy of the great heroes before them. In the heart of Hyrule, beneath the light of the sun and the shadows of the night, the hero's journey was not truly finished. The cycle of light and dark, of hope and despair, would continue as it always had. But with each hero, there came a new chapter, one that carried with it the lessons learned from the past and the promise of a new beginning. The story of the hero, however, is not always one of glory. The path to greatness is fraught with sacrifice, and as the centuries passed, the lands of Hyrule bore the scars of those who had fought for its future. The Master Sword, though a powerful weapon, was no longer simply a blade. It was a symbol of the trials and struggles that had shaped the kingdom. It had seen many battles, and it would see many more. Link, the hero of many ages, had grown accustomed to the weight of this legacy. His journey through Hyrule, through the depths of the Twilight Realm, and across the vast seas, had brought him face to face with not just monsters and villains, but with the very essence of what it meant to be a hero. The sword he wielded was not just a weapon, it was a symbol of his purpose. And yet, no matter how many battles he fought, no matter how many trials he overcame, Link knew that his legacy was not one he could carry alone. Zelda, the princess who had stood beside him through countless trials, was no mere bystander in the story of Hyrule. She was the heart of the kingdom, the keeper of its wisdom, and the protector of its people. As the goddess Hylia had once imbued her with power, so too did she carry the responsibility of ensuring the kingdom's future. Her role was not just one of royal duties, it was a responsibility to the land itself, to the gods who watched over it, and to the heroes who had come before her. As the forces of darkness rose and fell, Zelda remained the unwavering force that tied the kingdom together. But even in the face of her immense power and wisdom, Zelda understood that Hyrule's survival was not simply in the hands of one person. It was a collective effort, shaped by the hearts and minds of all its people. The kingdom could not depend on one hero, or even a few. It had to depend on the strength of its collective will. The legacy of Hyrule's past heroes was not just in their actions, but in the enduring spirit they had passed on. It was with this understanding that Zelda began to build for Hyrule's future. No longer would the kingdom rely solely on the bravery of individual heroes. Instead, it would nurture the spirit of heroism in all its people, teaching them the values of courage, wisdom, and power. She knew that the battle against darkness was never truly over, but it was a battle that could be won, not just through the actions of one person, but through the collective strength of all. As the kingdom of Hyrule began to rebuild, Zelda sought to unite the various factions of the land, to bring together the tribes, the races, and the peoples that had once been divided by war. The kingdom was no longer just a place of castles and fields, it was a realm of many voices, each with their own strengths and histories. The people of Hyrule were no longer simply subjects to a king or queen, they were the lifeblood of the kingdom itself. But even as Zelda sought to create this united future, the shadows of the past were never far behind. The Triforce, the sacred relic of the gods, had once been the source of power and peace, but it was also a reminder of the fragile balance between light and dark. In the past, the Triforce had been the key to defeating the forces of evil, but it was also the key to the kingdom's downfall. It had brought great blessings, but it had also sown the seeds of greed and corruption. And so, Zelda chose to hide the Triforce, to keep it safe from those who would seek to use its power for selfish gain. She understood that the true power of Hyrule lay not in the Triforce, but in the hearts of its people, their willingness to protect the land, to fight for its future, and to stand together in the face of adversity. The Triforce, though a powerful symbol, was not the source of the kingdom's strength. The people were. Link, too, had come to understand this truth. The hero's journey, he realized, was not about defeating evil with a sword. It was about inspiring others to rise up and protect what they loved. His legacy was not in the Master Sword or the battles he had fought. It was in the spirit of courage that he had passed on to those who followed in his footsteps. His journey had taught him that true strength comes not from the weapon you wield, but from the heart that guides it. As the land of Hyrule continued to heal, Link and Zelda knew that their work was far from done. The darkness would always seek to return, in new forms and in new faces. But as long as the people of Hyrule remembered the lessons of the past, as long as they continued to stand together in the face of adversity, the kingdom would endure. The hero's legacy was not one that would be forgotten. It would live on in the hearts of all who believed in the spirit of courage, wisdom, and power. And as long as that legacy remained, the kingdom of Hyrule would stand strong, forever protected by the enduring strength of its people. Hyrule, like all kingdoms, is shaped by the passage of time, an endless cycle of triumphs and trials, victories and defeats. But even in moments of peace, the shadow of evil always lingers just beyond the horizon, waiting for the right moment to return. The people of Hyrule, having rebuilt their land after the calamity, had learned the hard lessons of their past. But no matter how many heroes rise, no matter how much peace they achieve, there will always be forces that seek to disrupt the balance. This time, the return of darkness was not heralded by the rise of a singular villain. It was the return of an old foe, one who had never truly been vanquished, but merely sealed away by the hero's strength. Ganon, the dark sorcerer and beast, had returned once more, but this time he was more cunning, more powerful than ever before. The winds whispered his name, and the land trembled under his influence. The power of the Triforce had never been entirely safe, and once again it would be tested. The Triforce, that sacred relic of unimaginable power, had once been the source of light and hope for Hyrule, but it was also a force of immense temptation and destruction. Ganon's desire to control the Triforce had led him down paths of deceit, betrayal, and darkness. Though he had been defeated many times, each time he returned stronger, and each time Hyrule paid the price. The cycle of light and dark, of hope and despair, was bound by the will of the Triforce, a relic whose power was both a blessing and a curse. Link, the hero who had once wielded the Master Sword and stood against Ganon's malevolent forces, had lived through countless trials. Yet this new return of Ganon was different. Hyrule was no longer the kingdom it had once been. Its people were more cautious, more weary, their hope tempered by the lessons of the past. And Link, too, had changed. He was no longer the young boy of legend, but a warrior forged through experience, a hero who had learned the true cost of peace. But even with the weight of past battles on his shoulders, Link knew that he could not face this new threat alone. He needed not only his strength, but the strength of the people, of the land itself. It was not just the sword that would save Hyrule, it was the will of its people, the unity of those who refused to give in to despair. The heroes of the past had fought for Hyrule, but now it was time for the kingdom itself to rise and protect the future. Zelda, the princess and the heart of Hyrule, had always known the power of the Triforce. She had long been the keeper of wisdom and the protector of the land, and she knew that Hyrule's survival depended not on a single person, but on the unity of the entire kingdom. In this time of darkness, Zelda would once again rise to lead her people, not just with the power of the Triforce, but with the wisdom to guide them through their darkest hour. Together, Link and Zelda would face Ganon once more, but this time, their battle would not be fought with weapons alone. It would be a battle of wills, a struggle not just for the Triforce, but for the very soul of Hyrule. The land, though scarred, still held the light of its past, and it was this light that would guide them. They would need to seek the help of the ancient sages, the guardians who had once protected the land, and through their wisdom, they would find the strength to resist the darkness. The journey took Link and Zelda across the land, through places they had long known and places they had never seen. They journeyed to the farthest reaches of the kingdom, seeking out the remnants of the ancient powers that had once protected Hyrule. From the sacred temples hidden deep in the forests to the mysterious ruins of the ancient sages, they found not just the remnants of the past, but the will of the people. Everywhere they went, the people of Hyrule had not forgotten their legacy. They had not forgotten the sacrifices of the past, nor the heroes who had fought to protect them. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the kingdom, they found that Ganon's influence had spread far and wide. The land itself seemed to warp under his power, twisting the forests, the mountains, and the rivers into dark, corrupted forms. The once vibrant fields were now lifeless, the skies clouded with a sense of impending doom. Ganon's power was not just that of a dark sorcerer, it was the very essence of decay and destruction, the force that sought to erase all that was good in the world. The final battle against Ganon was not just one of swordplay, it was a battle of hearts, a battle for the soul of Hyrule. Link and Zelda stood together, their swords raised against the dark sorcerer, but they knew that it was not their strength alone that would win the day. They had to rely on the power of the people, on the strength of their bond, and on the wisdom of the ancient sages. The Triforce had never been about power. It was about balance. And in the final moments, it was the balance between courage, wisdom, and power that would tip the scales in their favor. The battle raged on, and the land itself seemed to shake with the force of their struggle. The skies crackled with energy, and the earth trembled beneath their feet. Link fought with all the strength he could muster, wielding the Master Sword with precision and grace. But Ganon, fueled by the power of the Triforce, was a formidable adversary. Every blow Link struck was met with a counterattack, and every step forward felt like a struggle against the very forces of nature. But in the end, it was the unity of Hyrule that prevailed. With the help of Zelda, the sages, and the people of Hyrule, Link was able to strike the final blow. The Master Sword, shining with the light of the goddesses, pierced Ganon's heart, and the dark sorcerer fell, his power broken. The Triforce once again was returned to its rightful place, and the land of Hyrule was freed from the grip of darkness. But even as Ganon's evil was vanquished, Link and Zelda knew that their work was not done. The land of Hyrule, though saved for now, would always need its protectors. The battle between light and dark, between hope and despair, would continue for as long as Hyrule stood. But as long as the people of Hyrule remembered the lessons of the past, and as long as there were those willing to stand against the darkness, the light would always prevail. And so, dear listener, as you drift into sleep, remember that the story of Hyrule is not just the story of one hero, but the story of all heroes. The darkness may rise again, but so too will the light. The strength of the kingdom lies not in the Triforce or the Master Sword, but in the hearts of those who protect it. Just as the hero of time rose to defend the kingdom, so too can we rise to face the darkness in our own lives. For as long as there is courage, wisdom, and hope, the light will never fade. The legend of Hyrule, as vast and as old as time itself, stretches across the eons, intertwining the fates of many heroes, each with their own trials and triumphs. It is a land marked by cycles, where each battle between light and dark brings with it the chance for new heroes to rise, new kingdoms to be rebuilt, and new stories to be written. Yet for all the tales told, for all the victories won, there are still mysteries that remain hidden, buried beneath the weight of time. Even after the many trials faced by Link and Zelda, and the countless battles against darkness that had ravaged the kingdom, there were still secrets to uncover. These secrets, long forgotten by the people of Hyrule, were buried deep within the land, waiting for the right moment to be unearthed. The kingdom of Hyrule, though rebuilt and restored, still carried within it the echoes of a forgotten past, a past that, if uncovered, could change the very course of its future. Link, the hero who had once wielded the Master Sword and battled against the forces of Ganon, had long since returned to a life of peace. The kingdom had been saved, and the people rejoiced in their newfound hope. But even as the kingdom began to flourish, Link found himself drawn to the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface. The land of Hyrule, though restored, still held secrets, secrets that Link could not ignore. One day, while exploring the quiet, untouched forests of Hyrule, Link stumbled upon an ancient relic, a stone tablet covered in forgotten runes, half buried beneath the roots of a great tree. The tablet was unlike anything Link had seen before. Its markings were strange and unfamiliar, etched in a language lost to time. But as he touched the stone, something stirred within him, a deep, resonating pull, as if the stone itself was calling to him. The relic, though dormant for so long, was a key to a long-forgotten history, one that had been erased from the annals of time. The tablet spoke of an ancient civilization that had once thrived in Hyrule, a civilization that had been lost to history. its knowledge buried beneath the passage of centuries. This lost kingdom, known as the Lanairu civilization, had once been a great power, its people masters of magic, technology, and the very elements themselves. As Link uncovered the stone's secrets, he learned that the Lanairu civilization had once lived in harmony with the goddesses, their power drawn from the Triforce itself. The people of Lanairu had created wondrous machines, magical artifacts, and cities that touched the skies. But despite their advancements, their arrogance had led them down a dangerous path. They sought to harness the power of the gods for themselves, to control the forces that governed the world. This desire for power led to their downfall, and the civilization was wiped from the face of Hyrule, its cities falling into ruin, its people forgotten. Yet the Lanairu civilization had left behind something that would change the fate of Hyrule, a legacy. The remnants of their technology, their knowledge, and their power still lingered in the land, hidden in forgotten temples, beneath the earth, and within the hearts of those who still remembered their existence. It was this legacy that Link would have to uncover, for the power of the Lanairu was not just a relic, it was a key to understanding the true balance between light and dark. Link's quest took him to the ancient ruins of the Lanairu civilization, hidden deep within the land. These ruins, though covered by time and decay, still held remnants of their once great power. The ancient temples, once places of worship and learning, had now become tombs for those who had fallen in the kingdom's decline. Yet within these sacred halls, Link found the knowledge that had been lost for centuries, a knowledge that could help him understand the forces that had shaped Hyrule and that would once again rise to challenge it. The deeper Link ventured into the ruins, the more he uncovered about the true nature of the Triforce, the balance between the forces of light and dark, and the eternal struggle that had shaped Hyrule's fate. He discovered that the Triforce was not merely a relic to be sought, it was a living force, a symbol of the harmony between the goddesses, their chosen champions, and the land itself. The power of the Triforce was a gift, but it was also a curse. It could be used to restore balance, but it could also be used to bring destruction. As Link delved into the mysteries of the Lanairu civilization, he began to understand that the struggle between light and dark was not just a battle against external forces, it was a battle within the heart of Hyrule itself. The darkness that had once threatened to consume the kingdom was not just an evil to be fought, but a part of the kingdom's very soul. The land of Hyrule, its people, and its heroes were all connected by the Triforce, and the balance between these forces was delicate, always shifting, always in danger of breaking. But the hero, though burdened by this knowledge, did not falter. He knew that his journey was not just one of discovery, it was one of action. He had to protect the balance, not just for the kingdom, but for the very soul of Hyrule. The battle against darkness was never truly over, and it would fall to him to stand against the forces that sought to disturb this balance. Link's quest took him across the land to the temples and ruins where the power of the Lanairu civilization lay hidden. In each temple, he uncovered a piece of the puzzle, a clue to the true nature of the Triforce and the dark forces that threatened to tear it apart. But as he uncovered the secrets of the past, he realized that the future of Hyrule was not written in the pages of history. It was written in the hearts of those who lived in the present. The people of Hyrule, though scarred by their past, had the power to shape their own destiny. The Triforce was not just a tool of destruction, it was a force for good, and it was up to the people of Hyrule to decide how it would be used. Link, the hero of time, had learned that the true power of the Triforce lay not in its magic, but in the will of those who wielded it. The hero's legacy was not one of glory or victory. It was one of sacrifice, of protecting the kingdom, not just with a sword, but with the courage to stand against the darkness. And as Link returned to the kingdom, knowing that his journey was far from over, he understood that the true legacy of Hyrule lay not in the past, but in the future. The balance between light and dark would always be tested, but as long as there were heroes to protect the land, the light would never truly fade. Thank you, dear friend, for drifting with me through the gentle currents of Hyrule's long and winding history. As the last echoes of these ancient stories settle, allow your breath to soften, your shoulders to loosen, and your thoughts to fall into a quiet, peaceful hush. The legends we wandered through tonight of courage, wisdom, and power can now rest inside you like a faint glow, warm and steady, guiding you deeper toward sleep. You've traveled through eras of light and shadow, through forests touched by forgotten magic, and across kingdoms shaped by heroes whose names linger softly on the winds of time. Now, as the world around you grows still, let those stories melt into the background, becoming a calm, distant lullaby. If you'd like to drift through more gentle journeys like this, you're always welcome to return, to subscribe, to settle in again whenever the night calls you. For now, may your dreams be warm, may your rest be deep, and may the quiet peace of Hyrule stay with you through the night. Good night.